knows? We don't want to know! We're dedicated, yes, to our favorite shows!
Oh my circuits!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad!
Scary Dog!
Flirting at Blurnsville! Futurama!
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich and Broadcasting Premier Podcast TV Party Tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly my tongue hurts, Mr. Mark Radulich. And thankfully, because I am in such dire straits, oh, the pain, oh, the agony, I am joined by a cast of thousands, and by thousands I mean three, possibly a fourth later. First, she's the queen of these here parts. She brings you all the animation news. She promotes her own stuff, and she has a legion of followers. And in her spare time, she makes jewelry. Jewelry that my wife and my daughter need. Ladies and gentlemen, from Honeysuckle Rose Creations, it's Alexis Hejna. How do you do, madam?
Okay, if the need was a code, I assure you the hair barrettes in the mail.
Wait, well, which one? Because I've only ordered one, but I told you I need the other one.
What was the other one you said you need?
The three ghosts from Haunted Mansion.
Oh, that one. The hitchhiking ghost. Okay, I just literally got that one made. It's not even on the website yet.
Well, I think you should just send me like a beta tester for my wife, and we should put that with a yellow rose in her hair, and I'll take a picture of it, and you can be like, advertising.
Okay. I apologize that when you say my legion of followers, I am sure you meant the corgi who decided to start barking as soon as you told us all to be quiet so you could start recording.
Well, that's par for the course. I forgot to mention we're actually
Eddie wanting to add color commentary.
Before I bring up the other two panelists, I forgot to mention what we're actually talking about tonight. We're talking about our favorite show, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, brought to you by the good people at the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Disney+. Joining us here, and now I usually only drag him out for high-class shows like The Crown, but occasionally he likes to slum it in the Marvel and the Lucasfilm verse. Ladies and gentlemen, from our Radulich and Broadcasting Office North, it's Andrew Graham. How do you do, sir?
I do well, Mark. How do you do?
I'm going to get through this. You know, a little speech impediment here, a little mushmouth there, but I am a tough guy, and I can barrel through this. I can absolutely stay quiet while the three of you argue about these things.
So, are you saying that you could do this all day?
I can do this all day. And
understood that reference.
Very good, sir. Yay, Marvel stuff.
It's gonna be a long night.
And there he is, ready to rain on your parade, be a dark cloud in the sky, ready to point at everyone here and say you are all weirdos. A man prepared to die on a hill. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. No Cell, No Fun, No Party, All Serious, Coverage God, Robert Winfree. How do you do, sir?
I am the dark cloud to your silver lining.
Ain't that the truth?
I feel like Rob needs like a Darkwing Duck sort of introduction at some point.
The Darkwing Duck of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network? Perfect.
I am the cloud that rains on your parade. I am...
Keep going, Andrew.
I was about to say, I am the cloud that rains on your parade. I am the poker that blows through your plot. Something along that line. But Darkwing Duck would always do like the three verse, progressively more silly introduction before he tried to introduce himself, and 9 times out of 10 that never worked.
Well, now I know how you're being introduced when we talk Spiral next week, or Woman in the Window tomorrow. We'll see how fast I can get my homework done. All right.
There's probably a super clip on YouTube you can just watch all of them in one go.
Perfect. All right, so Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we were supposed to get this August of last year. It was supposed to kick off. It was supposed to be the second part of Phase 4, first being Black Widow, then this, then Eternals, then WandaVision, then Doctor Strange. But suddenly COVID, much like suddenly Zemo, who we'll talk about momentarily,
I'd rather have COVID than more Zemo.
Don't say that.
100% mean it. If I could excise him from this television series via a quick bout of COVID, I would happily make that trade.
Okay, good for you. In any case, we didn't get that. Everything got all screwed up. Filming for this got delayed because of COVID, because they were filming in Europe, and Europe was a city aflame with rock and roll and COVID. So
or was it?
So everything got topsy-turvy, and we didn't get this until March. And we haven't even gotten Black Widow yet, and Doctor Strange isn't coming until next year. So there you go. But I'll go round by round here. Just real quick. Alexis, you first. What were when they announced they were doing a Falcon and Winter Soldier show, what were your expectations? What did you hope it would be? What were you thinking in terms of this show? Well, I go turn off my Alexis and throw it out the window.
You really never learn, do you? I have to admit, part of me was hoping to see a little bit more of Bucky and Wakanda. I was really excited when I heard him start calling him the White Wolf in Infinity War. I thought we were going to see more of that. But still, I was really happy we were going to get more of these characters. Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie had really great chemistry together in Civil War, even though they were playing characters who just could not stand each other. But it was still a lot of fun. So when I heard they were bringing these two out, I figured we were going to be in for a treat.
All right, Andrew, what were you most excited for when they announced that they were doing a Falcon and Winter Soldier show?
I'd say, going forward with the MCU and trying to establish what's going to happen to the Shield post Captain America. Of course, once COVID hit, anything new I basically became very excited for. So,
okay. And Robert, you weren't looking forward to this. You're here because these are the kinds of things that we review, and this is the life that this is the life you didn't ask for but got anyway. But let me ask you, what were you hoping the show would be once you knew that this was going to happen to you?
Short. I think more than anything. And look, lest you all get the impression that I am just some kind of horrible malcontent, I have positive things to say about this show. I will get to them when it's appropriate.
You're still a horrible malcontent anyway.
True. Better way to phrase that. I am not only going to bring my pitchfork and shovel to this particular podcast. I have good things to say about this show. What did I want out of this? Again, the cynical answer is short because I was not terribly interested. A few decent action sequences, of which I got about 1.5, if I want to be generous. More of Sebastian Stan as Bucky, because he is quite good. I genuinely did not have a tremendous amount of expectations, good, bad, or otherwise, for this show. Again, my somewhat snide comments aside. I'm not terribly familiar with any of the team-ups that these two guys have done in the comics. It was just a pairing and just another Marvel series to be consumed and discarded as such.
I got the impression, just from doing some reading on this, that part of the reason they were doing this was people seem to really respond positively. Maybe not you, but most people seem to respond positively to their interaction in Civil War, and they thought, okay, people like this. People got a good chuckle out of this sort of acrimonious sort of buddy antagonizing thing that they were doing. Let's do more of that. And so in part that's how they landed on doing this show. But obviously the other thing they had to have had in mind was, we're going to need Avengers for a future movie. We're going to need Avengers people are familiar with, and we want more inclusion, we want more representation. So, it isn't as though Falcon wasn't a version of Captain America in the comics. So why not do that? And this being sort of a setup for that later on. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. He becomes Captain America, and now we have a Captain America 4 on the way. So I think in large part that's a lot of, plus, WandaVision was such a claustrophobic kind of singular focus show. It was specifically on her, and half of the show takes place in a fantasy land. You don't really get a sense of what's going on after the blip in that show. They needed, and if this had occurred when it was supposed to, it would have been the first thing we've seen post Endgame, that would have dealt with life before, during, and after the blip, which was the intention. So let's get into it. Episode 1, New World Order. 6 months after half of all life returned from the blip, Sam Wilson stops George Batroc and the terrorist group LAF, who have hijacked a plane and taken a hostage over Tunisia. With support from the U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Joaquin Torres, Wilson, who was given the mantle of Captain America by Steve Rogers, struggles with this idea and decides to give Rogers' shield to the U.S. government for a museum display. Bucky Barnes, who was recently pardoned, attends government-mandated therapy where he discusses his attempts to make amends for his time as a brainwashed assassin, the Winter Soldier. Torres investigates another group, the Flag Smashers, who believe life was better during the blip. Torres is injured by a member of the group with superhuman strength when he witnesses them rob a bank in Switzerland. He later informs Wilson of this, who has been attempting to help his reluctant sister Sarah with a family fishing business in Delacroix, Louisiana. The government soon announces new Captain America, John Walker. Just because there's a lot of us here, I'm going to keep this really brief, and then we'll go around the horn. The things I liked about this first episode, one, was I liked the fact that despite his reaction at the end of Endgame, I like the fact that Sam Wilson struggles for a variety of reasons with the mantle of Captain America. I don't know if it's this episode or one in the future where he's like, how do I take on the mantle of Captain America when I don't feel this country, and I'm paraphrasing, when I don't feel like this country totally represents me? What am I supposed to do with this? And he talks about in the beginning of the episode, when he gives the shield over, that maybe there just doesn't need to be a Captain America anymore. We've had one. We had the guy for it. Maybe this is an idea for which, time should move on. And I kind of like that. I like the reticence and the struggle with what it means to be Captain America to Sam Wilson, and him shying away from it. I love the fact that because this is a 6-hour movie and less a television show and not a traditional 2.5 hour Marvel movie, that we actually took time to spend with Sam and his sister. And we got into the nitty gritty of what happens if you were one of the people dusted and then you come back, and how do you pick up the strands of your life? It was fun to see him be an action hero in the beginning, but then he has to be a real person. And sometimes, as Robert and I were talking about earlier in the week, red tape and bureaucracy can be a real thing. And, and there can be a lack of common sense, and it can be a real struggle for people. And I like the fact that as silly as Marvel can be at times, that they wrestled with that, and they played with it, and they put it out there for people to think about. The other thing I really liked about this first episode was them acknowledging that Bucky went from fight to fight to fight to fight for 100 years, and even when he got better, he was still in the process of trying to get better or fighting. And now, in post Endgame, there's no fight to be had, and he doesn't know what to do with himself, and he has all of this trauma, and so we're dealing with some of the same things from WandaVision. And I love that Marvel is looking at these characters like they're real people, and what would they do in the situation that they've been dealt. And so I think Sebastian Stan does a really good job of playing the traumatized soldier. And, what do you do when the war is over and you have to go back to living real life? Only his situation is so much more, exponential. I'll shut up now, and I'll let you guys talk about what you liked about New World Order. First, Alexis, what did you think of the first episode?
One of the things that caught me about this episode was after WandaVision, so many people complained about how it was an incredibly slow start. That, that we really had to wait a few episodes for things to get going and for there to be any action and to figure out what was going on. This show basically says, oh, okay, you want things to start off right off the bat? Okay, here you go. I mean, we get an amazing action sequence with the helicopters and Falcon going through the canyon, trying to with Falcon trying to stop before they enter basically another country's airspace, in which they're not going to have any dominion whatsoever. The action is great. It's fast paced. It's energetic, and it's so much fun. Yeah, I remember watching this Friday morning, early morning when it premiered, and I'm cheering on Falcon as he's going after Batroc, who is also a really great villain. I'm glad they brought back, GSP must basically said, oh yes, please let me come back. I want to fight more Marvel heroes. Which I'm fine with.
Yes, I would like to come back and hit them hard.
They cannot handle my rhythm.
Are we good now? Have we gotten this all out of our system? Our George St. Pierre impressions?
Marvel, please! I'm gonna go down on my knees right now, Marvel. Please! Please give me the shot to come back.
Okay. What else, Alexis?
That ending stuck with me so much that Sam Wilson, I mean, how do you live up to an icon like Captain America? I think that's kind of like, I don't know. In a way, I think it's kind of like somebody's coming up and saying, we don't only need you to be president, we need you to be the next Abraham Lincoln. Captain America is such an icon. And how do you take an icon's place? It's terrifying. So he does the right thing, and then he watches on TV that the government essentially said, wow, that was so great what you did. So touching. But you know what? Screw it. We're going to give the shield to another dude. Just the low blow of that. Oh, my God. I mean, we all knew U.S. Agent was coming. We'd seen the trailers, and we saw, the cast list. We knew the character was going to be there. But to be introduced like that, it just, your jaw hangs open that they would pull the rug out from under Sam Wilson like they did.
Yeah, it was a very U.S. government thing to do, to be like, yes, we'll take the shield, and yes, we'll honor his memory, and we'll make a memorial to him, and that's all fine. 5 minutes later, we're giving it to another guy, okay? Don't fucking tell the black guy. Yeah, it was, I looked at that, and I was like, yup, that rings true, right, Andrew?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think a lot of what this series covers is legacy, and we'll talk about that once Isaiah comes in and the way that character was treated in terms of some very real events in American history when it comes to African American remembrance of actions and things like that.
Alexis, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about with episode 1?
There's a lot more to discuss, but I don't think I can really talk about it without just covering everything, and I want to give the other guys a chance to talk about it. So,
all right, Andrew, your thoughts on? Go ahead. Sorry.
I was saying I've given enough thoughts. Let's hear from someone else.
Andrew, your thoughts on episode 1?
Yeah, I think I'm in line with both yourself and Alexis so far on where it goes in terms of setting up the stakes, maybe not setting up the stakes. That's probably more of a criticism, but setting up the characters, setting up where they are in terms of things. I'm going to pick up on a point that Alexis made and take it one step further. Not only is this a matter of someone asking Sam to, replace Abraham Lincoln, but you're also Abraham Lincoln's best friend. This isn't somebody who you knew in the abstract. This is somebody who you knew personally. And I think, full disclosure, Sam Wilson's probably one of my favorite utility characters in the MCU to this point. Really liked him from minute one in Winter Soldier and their relationship and the kind of person they established him to be. and then him actually being asked by Steve, who he knew really well, and like I said, was one of his best friends, to take over that mantle, not only to live up to being Captain America, but also to being Steve Rogers, and that kind of challenge that it brings forth to him. And the other side of this is obviously talking about Bucky. I think, one of the things that you could probably write about, I'm surprised there's not a whole essay book on it, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe and trauma. Mm-hmm. That is one of the long-running through lines on everything to do with the MCU. I mean, you go through a lot of the characters, and trauma is one of their drivers and one of the big themes they deal with. And they definitely get into this with Bucky in terms of trying to make amends and him not quite making amends, and then him forging the relationship with the father of what turned out to be one of his Winter Soldier victims, and trying to take the next step forward. The rest of the episode's really good. I mean, we've made the comments. I think the opening action scene was quite effective. It's always good to see GSP come in and do some work as Batroc. I'm actually just towards the end of the episode right now. I've got it playing in the background, and I'm watching the introduction of the Flag Smashers, and I did quite enjoy the scene. The stunt crew's work on this series kind of throughout was really, really good, and there's some little touches I like. For example, when the main Flag Smasher, the one who jumps out the window and launch and kind of hits quote unquote superhero landing, when he stands up, he just adjusts his jacket for a little bit of style to it, and it's just one of those little touches that I kind of like in action scenes to add a little character. But yeah, solid first episode.
All right, Robert. Before you tell us your thoughts on the first episode, show me where the show bothered you. Where did you start to lose your patience with this? Like was it like from episode 1, or were you kind of getting into it and then something happened and you're like, nope, and it all went downhill from there? About where did the show lose you?
Where did this lose me? I don't know where it lost my interest. I can tell you the exact moment I was going to turn it off if I wasn't reviewing it. But
okay.
We'll get that's later.
Okay.
I know that exact moment. What did I
say? Is this the moment where Bart Simpson says, "Watch this"? You could see the exact moment his heart rips in half.
I would have to care about this for my heart to be ripped in half, but I can pinpoint the exact moment I would have gone nope and just walked away and not missed out on anything. But
I'm turning this shit off and I'm putting on Attack on Titan.
I don't know what I would have watched instead. It could have been a lot of stuff. No, I would not watch Titans, you ginger douchebag, my brother. I didn't hate the first episode. The opening action sequence is the best thing in this entire stupid show. They do a great job of framing it. It has great motion. It has great energy. The tactics are great. Everything is readable. Everything makes sense. With maybe one exception, but it's a small enough one that I don't care enough to make a big deal about it. It's really good. It's everything you more or less want out of this kind of a setup, and I was fine. I like what they did with Bucky. I like him lying to his therapist, because everyone lies to their therapist. Right, Mark?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When's the last time you had an honest conversation?
It certainly wasn't today, I'll tell you that much.
So, I liked most of that. The stuff with Sam and the bank, I kind of rolled my eyes at, but
can I ask why?
Not because it's not true to life, but because it's obvious setup.
Okay.
And that tends to... Look, I did the same thing with Sam giving the shield to the Smithsonian. Not because it's not something that... I like it as a character. Well, let me be clear. I liked it as a character touch. I liked his speech when he gave it up. Whoever wrote the wiki for this entry vastly overestimated the appearances of Don Cheadle in it, because they list War Machine as something of a mentor to Sam through parts of this, and he's here for 3 minutes. Nice paycheck if you can get it, I suppose.
But he's got Armor Wars coming up. He'll get his due.
I'm sure he will. Boy, remember when he was paralyzed for all of 3 minutes? And something actually mattered?
Magic exists in this world. Get the fuck over it.
No, look. I only bring that up because I got a good laugh out of talking about Johnny Gargano in his War Machine outfit. Because much like Sam Wilson, after about 3 minutes, he was no selling paralysis.
Okay.
He shows up for a bit. My big gripe with that is not so much that it's not a good character moment. It's more when he looks at the screen as John Walker comes out dumbfounded, and I wanted to smack him on the back of the head and go, "What did you expect, dumbass?" Like, it's you hit the nail on the head. It's so true to life. Expecting something else makes you a moron. And that's one of my big gripes with Sam Wilson throughout all of this. He's a shit fighter and kind of stupid.
Someone sighed. Whoever sighed, you sound like you have a counterpoint. That counterpoint sounds like a sigh. Please give your counterpoint sigh.
You know, it's actually kind of funny. I have to bring this up about the whole S.H.I.E.L.D. thing. I think it was over on the Escapist magazine. Somebody actually wrote an entire article about the legality of who owns the S.H.I.E.L.D. and whether or not Sam could sue. And this is an actual lawyer who wrote this and said, yeah, Sam could probably sue because...
Oh, he could have. 100%.
They're not using it for their intended purpose.
That particular artifact was not the property of the Smithsonian. It was on loan from an individual who was the rightful owner. They had no legal right to do that.
Okay, can I don't want to be the comic book guy, and I really don't want this to get into the minutia, but didn't we establish in Civil War that the S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't really belong to Captain America? It was, in fact, vis-a-vis S.H.I.E.L.D. government property?
No, it's Cap's.
No, it's not.
He gives it to Tony because Tony's being a little bitch.
And then Tony gave it back to Cap.
Yeah, like the chain of custody here is quite clear.
It's entirely possible the government just assumes because it's Captain America's shield that it belongs to the American government. I mean, again, pretty sure that's how the real world American government would act.
All right, so
the eminent domain, the S.H.I.E.L.D.
Let me ask this, and I honestly don't know the answer to this. I am sort of ancillarily aware that if you are discharged from the Army, if you are discharged from the military, the American military, I can't speak to the Canadian moose and squirrel thing that you guys have up in Canada.
Hey.
But here in the United States, I believe if you are when you are issued weapons, obviously, to do your job, such as it is in the American military, and I believe when you decide to leave, you take the weapons home. Can anyone speak intelligently to that? Is that not how it goes, or is that how it goes? Robert, you seem to know everything.
The issue in this case is that the S.H.I.E.L.D. was never actually government property.
Okay. Answer the first question, sir.
Okay. The first
yes,
question.
You have to turn in your equipment.
Yeah, you turn in your equipment when you're discharged.
Okay, so if you're issued an M16 rifle as part of the infantry, you don't get to take it home with you.
Correct.
Weird.
Unless you're in Switzerland.
Okay.
It makes sense when when you leave the police department, you don't get to take the gun with you.
See, but again, I was under the understanding that you may be issued a standard side piece, but you can actually go out and get, within certain parameters, your own, you can get like a 9mm or whatever, and that is your property.
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
Very much. Anything issued to you by the Army at the end of your service is returned.
Mm-hmm.
But depending on this will vary depending on individual priorities and individual war theaters. I mean, there was a big thing about a bunch of soldiers in I forget whether it was Iraq or Afghanistan, but they found a lot of use for tomahawks as both weaponry and utility tools. So they were purchasing them with their own money and then carrying them in the field. And then certain think pieces and groups got into it and decided, no, we don't actually like the visual of you carrying a tomahawk. Never mind how useful it is. I'm not kidding.
No, I'm just like thinking of like a military PR person going, maybe that's not the best look for our soldiers to be wandering around with fucking tomahawks.
It wasn't even a military PR person. There was some embedded journalist who did a story on them, and there's a picture that was on the front of, I forget what publication.
Once again, one reporter says something, and all of a sudden, everyone loses their collective shit.
All right, I'm going to put forth an argument, and then everyone's going to get to turn saying, yes, no, maybe, for God's sakes, move on, and then we're moving on. Okay, everyone's getting a turn at this, and Robert's having the last word, and then wherever we landed, that's where we'll be buried. Here's my argument. It was created by the government under under lead scientist Tony Stark's dad,
Howard.
Thank you, Howard Stark, with government resources that they got from Wakanda. They turned it into a frisbee, as Ultron said, and it was issued to an enlisted soldier. And they just let him keep it because he was who he was. But Tony makes a valid point when he says at the end of Civil War that doesn't belong to you, and never mind the tantrum he's throwing, and when he says you don't deserve it, that's a whole other argument and a whole other issue. But he is, in fact, accurate when he says it doesn't belong to you. And as we just established, if it's a government-issued weapon, you have to return it to the government when your service is done. And at that point at the end of Civil War, he was an outlaw. He was no longer a government employee and government soldier, etc., agent, whatever. And so, giving it to Sam, I mean, again, at this point, who's arguing with Steve Rogers about what he does or what he doesn't do with the shield after everything that's happened? And so, out of his own ignorance and belief that the thing belongs to him, he gives it to Sam, and Sam's like, no thanks, gives it to the government, and the government's like, yeah, no, it is ours to do what we do. It is ours to do what we want with it. It's a government-issued weapon. Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, the way... I think we're almost getting a little too extra legal about a universe that
oh, I know we are.
In it.
I know we are, but
I mean, okay.
I want to finish this.
I think there's a whole tangled web of various agencies that Steve has worked for at this point, and I think there's some kind of standing element that maybe this is just his shield at this point, or maybe it's Tony's, who knows. The other side of it is, at this point, the shield in question could have been a brand new shield after the first one was broken by Thanos, so it could entirely be Steve's shield. And there's even a question, that Escapist article I mentioned, where even the Wakandans could have a claim because they may not have had the vibranium taken with their consent.
Vibranium.
Exactly. So, anyway, I mean, I think I'm kind of in the move on camp here because wizards and androids and things like that. It just depends if they have a hat. And I'm just going to throw this trivia in here, but apparently members of the Canadian Special Operations Regiment actually get issued those tomahawks.
Nice.
That's very nice.
All right.
Tomahawk, infinitely more useful than any baton.
Robert, your thesis on the subject?
The shield was never government property. It was created by an independent contractor, and unless the specifics of the contract between Howard Stark and the detachment of the United States military that he worked for expressly specified that any and all things he created became property of the U.S. government, it was in fact the property of Howard Stark. Or, in the absence of Howard Stark, Anthony Stark upon Howard Stark's death. That even becomes a little bit more murky when you potentially consider how the chain of custody would wrap up after Steve was in possession of it for so freaking long, while Tony made no claim on it. Tony's claim that doesn't belong to you is not actually a legal claim he's making. It's really not. It's more him going, I must save some kind of face as I am shamed.
I'm not arguing that point. I'm not saying he threw a legal brief at him and said that doesn't belong to you, and immediately proceeded to sue Steve in a cave somewhere in Stan.
I'm just gonna wonder if the shield was also written off as a lost asset after Steve crashed and was gone for 70 years.
That's true, actually.
Technically surplus.
If it was listed that way, then it would be Steve's because he technically salvaged it when they brought him back to life.
Wasn't Coulson there?
No,
Never
no,
mind.
not when they found him.
This was not the conversation we were expecting.
And these are the kind of brilliant debates I talked about on Twitter.
There was the scene in Civil War where the shield was technically confiscated by the government when Bucky, Sam, and Steve were taken in after the introduction of T'Challa. It's entirely possible that still was, ow, damn it, Cleo. I think my dog is biting me as a way of telling us to get on with it.
The legal argument in that case would be that it had then been confiscated and Steve stole it back, so it would, and since his legal status at the time was dubious at best, we would literally have to go movie by movie through the chain of custody of this, and even then there's specific contractual language that would determine things that is never discussed.
Well, I'm going to put the podcast on pause, replay some theme music, and that's all we're going to talk about for the next hour. Chain of custody, no. Alexis, you want to yell "move the fuck on"? Or do you have anything more to add to this?
I'm at the moment trying to get my dog to let go of my wrist. So
The Star-Spangled Man. Walker appears on Good Morning America and reveals his desire to live up to Roger's mantle. Barnes tells Wilson he should have kept the shield before accompanying him to Munich, where the Flag Smashers and their leader, Carly Morgenthau, are stealing a shipment of medicine. Wilson and Barnes attack the group, but the terrorists are all super soldiers and overpower the pair. Walker and Lamar Hoskins arrive to help, but the Flag Smashers escape. Walker wants to work with Barnes and Wilson, but they refuse. Traveling to Baltimore, Barnes introduces Wilson to Isaiah Bradley, a veteran super soldier who fought the Winter Soldier in the Korean War. However, Bradley refuses to help them uncover information about additional super soldiers due to him being imprisoned and experimented on by the U.S. government and Hydra for 30 years. Barnes is arrested for missing a therapy appointment, but Walker has him released. Barnes and Wilson again refuse to work with Walker, and Barnes suggests to Wilson that they visit the imprisoned Helmut Zemo. All right, I only have two things to say about this episode. I liked the car chase, fight on top of the trucks scene. I thought it was a fun action sequence.
Your taste is trash. We've established this. And
Your mom. Anyway, I enjoyed it. Not being an action snob or anything like that. It tickled my fancy, and I was enjoying watching it.
You don't have to be an action snob to point out how badly edited that is. You have to have functional eyes.
But the highlight of this episode, this should be a surprise to absolutely nobody, is the conversation between Isaiah and Falcon. For more on Isaiah, he is the star of the comic Truth, Red, White, and Black, which Alexis and Ben Cologne and I talked about on Monday, which is in the archives. Check it out. I didn't know that at the time, but I did enjoy the allusions to Tuskegee and what Isaiah is talking about, and I really did. I don't know. Identify is not the right word, considering who and what I am, but I related, I guess, and I don't even know if that's the best word for this, but I empathized with the Isaiah Bradley character in his argument about feeling frustrations with the U.S. government and feeling the country doesn't represent you when you're made to do when you're made to have what happened to him happen, being a lab rat and being mistreated, and then when it was all said and done, punished on top of everything else, and just feeling like, kind of what Busta Rhymes said in Finding Forrester, they only let you go so far, and then they throw up walls against you, and you just can't move forward. And I got it, man. I very much empathize with Isaiah, and I loved his character, and he's one of my favorite parts of this entire series. And him, and in that conversation between kind of the old black man and then the young black man, and and their different perspectives and the different times that they grew up in and what they represent to the black experience and the American experience and the black American experience. I was super into it, and I wanted more of that. I'll go to you first on this one, Andrew. What did you think of episode 2?
Again, really good episode. I think we're probably still in a lot of cases setting up things that'll pay off down the line. I think some of the bigger things that they start to introduce in here is Isaiah, which is, I believe it's Carl Lumley is the actor, and he was just a power host whenever he was on screen. I think, Mark, you've hit a lot of the points that I think touched for me as well, mentioning Tuskegee. I think the other thing this reminded me of was actually going back to another conversation we had regarding the Netflix series Medal of Honor about Edward A. Carter, who is a man who was awarded a Medal of Honor much later after after he had passed already, because in a lot of cases the acts of African Americans during the various world wars were somewhat downgraded and then reconsidered at a later point. So I think that's, I thought that was really affecting scenes and a really interesting way of bringing up some of that history. We get to see a little bit of the Flag Smashers in this one. We get to be introduced to Carly Margentow, who was played by, bear with me here,
A Wet Towel.
Erin Kellyman, who I actually thought was pretty good in this. I will say probably going towards a criticism of the series overall, I think they need to do, we get a basic introduction of what the Flag Smashers are and their general idea. I think they need to do a little bit more world building in this part of the series to really kind of establish what their what for and why is, because I think in this episode and through a lot of the series, there's talks of the cause and things being better and a lot of kind of vague explanations of what they're talking about. And is on some level that kind of accurate to a lot of, different, more extreme political groups? Sure it is, but from a narrative point of view, it can be a little tricky. I'd say the third part of this that I want to start talking about is obviously the introduction of Wyatt Russell as John Walker. So we get to see some of the initial conversations with him. We get to see how he interacts with his wife. And we get to kind of get the setting for that character of him being, the very obvious choice for who do you want as Captain America if you had to pick somebody out of a line and not a 98-pound asthmatic. Mm-hmm. They set him up that way. I can't remember, and this is probably where some of the episodes blur, so I'll maybe get a couple of points about John Walker right now. I mean, they certainly established that he's a 3-time Medal of Honor winner. I can't remember if it's this episode or another one, but I know it also shows him having some consternation about that, because it's like they're reminding me of the worst day of my life every time they mention it, which I think was something that was brought up again in the Netflix series that we reviewed and is available on the W2M network.
Good job.
I'm gonna hit the plugs.
I want to piggyback on that really quick. I won't take up too much time, but I like the fact that, unlike the comic book where John Walker was sort of a maniac, this version of John Walker is written as he's trying his level best. He doesn't quite get the finer points of what he needs to do with this job, and he's messing it up. I believe it's in the Honest trailer. They're like a direct descendant of the Kool-Aid Man. And then it's a bunch of shots of him bursting into the room, which I thought was funny.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh no. But yeah, I think I like the fact that they didn't go all in with him just being a complete asshole. That it's more of, you think you need to know. It's kind of like when you're fresh out of college, or as you Canadians say, university. And you go into your first job. You find this a lot with social workers. You go into your first job and you're full of like vim and vigor. You're just chomping at the bit to do stuff, and you make a lot of mistakes along the way. And you kind of learn over time the subtleties of doing a job dealing with people. And that's what I got from John Walker, Andrew.
Agreed, and I think it starts to set up his character as being one, quite, I think, kind of a little bit insecure in what he's dealing with, and a little bit, kind of eager to please, and maybe also we're showing a little bit of his trauma in there. Mm-hmm. And I want everyone to remember that, because I'm going to pay this off later once we get down the road, when we think about kind of his attributes that he's set up with.
Robert, your thoughts on episode 2?
Much like you guys, I was worried they were going to go full asshole with John Walker. And they didn't. One of the other things the show gets right. He's got friends. He's got a wife. And seeing those interactions is a very important bit of kind of grounding him as a person, not just the douchebag that was given the shield.
Mm-hmm.
So that all helps a lot. I'm going to say this pretty much every episode for when we review the rest of these from now on. Wyatt Russell might be the best thing in this show.
Okay.
He's very good.
He is I think the only thing I had seen him in before this was Overlord, which is certainly an interesting experience. The man can act. He does a great job with what he's given. That semi-chase scene. God, I hate that scene.
Why?
It's so badly edited.
Okay. Too many quick cuts?
It's not just quick cuts, that's part of it. Look at the amount of stuff that happens off frame.
Okay.
There's no flow to it. It's not just the quick cuts. You can quick cut a fight scene or an action sequence and it can still have flow. There's the fight, by way of example. There's a brief fight sequence between Mad Max and Furiosa in Fury Road, right after the sandstorm sequence, where he's still kind of cuffed to Nux, and there's a lot of cuts in that scene. There's a lot of cuts, but there's a flow to the action. Everything's readable. Everything happens center frame. You never get lost in what's going on. You get lost here. It's very difficult to track what's happening. It's kind of a mess in that respect. I did not care for it, and it got worse the longer it went on. Not well shot, not very well put together. Cool idea, but the execution fell kind of woefully short.
Robert, I'm going to just...
Go ahead.
I was about to say, I agree. I think there's definitely some editing issues on that one, but man, when you're comparing to Fury Road, you're comparing to possibly some of the best choreographed, shot, timed, scored action scenes in cinema history. So, I think, was it enjoyable enough? One, did it have room for improvement? Definitely. I think one thing it did well was it started to establish the capabilities of each one of the characters. So you had an idea of, assuming everyone else is a super soldier, what can Sam do against them? What can Bucky do against them? What can John Walker and what can, fine, I'm going to call him Battlestar, do against them? So it did do a really good job, and this is something that I think the MCU has been fairly good at, is trying to use some of these action scenes to communicate where the characters are in relation to each other. And I think it did a good job on that. It definitely has some shortcomings, but I thought it was a good enough scene.
Yes, why would I compare something to one of the best examples of it? Why should we aim for...
How would you compare it? How would you compare it to The Matrix Reloaded, the highway scene?
Not as good as that either.
Not as good as that either.
Okay. What would you say its closest cousin is?
Oh, pick a generic Transformers fight.
Really?
Oh,
Was that
that.
unreadable? I was going to say, that seems harsh.
Pick whatever one you want from your favorite Transformers movie, then.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm with you guys on the actor who plays Isaiah. Genuinely top-notch job. Really good stuff from him. I don't think there was anything else I really had from this episode. That's kind of it. So your big action set piece fell flat for me, and that honestly might be the point when this kind of started to lose me. If not here, definitely once we get into, I think it's the next episode, when I just kind of started rolling my eyes too hard to actually focus on the property.
Yeah, well, you seem to have a hard-on for Suddenly Zemo, so we'll talk about that next. All right. Alexis, the Star-Spangled Man, your thoughts?
First of all, yeah, Carl Lumley knocked it out of the park for his brief role as Isaiah Bradley. You do not mess with the voice of a Martian Manhunter. No, yeah, listening to what he talks about brought me to tears, and that was also one of the reasons why I got so excited when we got to read Truth, Red, White, and Black. this was a comment that I had briefly heard about before, but hearing his character talk about what he went through and how powerful that speech was, and how my dog just is dying to get commentary, and sweet Jesus. Hearing Lumley's speech about everything he went through made me so much more excited to read Truth, Red, White, and Black. He is on screen for just a few minutes, but he sells that story so much, and you are so moved by the compassion and the tragedy and what he describes. You want to know more about it. You want to know what happened to him, even though you know it's going to be horribly tragic. And speaking of good actors, yeah, Wyatt Russell, who I'm going to go ahead and admit I did not realize was the son of Ego the Living Planet. But how freaking cool is that?
It's a fan theory that he actually is one of the failed children of Ego.
Of course it's a fan theory. But hey, credit that Russell was willing to put up with the amount of hate mail and death threats he got. He actually did an interview where he said that he was happy to be the Marvel punching bag, as it were. He talked about how basically he realized that his character is supposed to be hated right now. He is not supposed to be well-liked. And if the fans are throwing this much of a tantrum against him, first of all, majority of Marvel fans seriously need to up their medication. But secondly, it proves he's definitely doing something right if he's getting this much of an emotion across from the fans.
Okay, what exactly were these nuts problems with? They didn't like his character? They didn't like the actor? What exactly was the issue?
Mark, it's still real to them, damn it.
Ugh.
Yeah, these fans don't realize... They're furious at U.S. Agent. They're furious at what he is. They don't realize that this is an actor. And I remember reading some of these death threats he was getting. I'm like, that he's doing a good job. It's like, he is supposed to be hated. He's in the first few episodes we see him, he's charming, he's likable in a sense. He's got a really nice smile. He seems perfectly friendly.
I have a question. As the old man of the podcast who sometimes doesn't understand the children, is there a segment of the population out there that doesn't want conflict in a Marvel movie? They don't want villains. They just want everyone to hold hands and sing along and jerk each other off?
Yes.
Okay.
I kind of read this as being more of the whole, kind of similar to the reaction. I can't remember either the actress or the character, but the actress who played Bryan Cranston's wife on Breaking Bad had very much a similar reaction.
People are assholes. I mean, granted, she's her character is written to be shrewish and shrill and terrible and the worst woman ever. I mean,
look, were I to meet Skylar White, I would punch her in the face.
She's an 11 on the Adrian scale, but the actress who plays her is an actress who acts. She acts.
Seriously.
She acts characters. That's what she does.
Mark, I'm not joking when I was not joking when I made that reference. It's still real to them, damn it.
These people need their internet
tape. The amount of hate mail the actress who played Dolores Umbridge got.
Ugh. Just why? Why? What? You know what? As I said on Zack Snyder's Justice League, you're all terrible. I hate you all, and you should have your Twitter taken away for good, and your cell phone's broken. You were saying, madam.
No, I really did like how he came across, because, again, you hate him, but you realize you don't hate him for really who he is as a person. You hate who he is because of who he is in this conflict. If Wyatt Russell's character, if Johnny Walker, as it is, never got the shield and never was appointed, he probably would have just been a perfectly nice, friendly guy, the kind of person that, you see at the neighborhood barbecues, who always brings good beer, and he's always got a big smile on his face, and, and he says hi to everyone. But because of the way he was placed into this story arc, you want to just see him suffer because of it. And he technically hasn't done anything wrong yet. But again, that's just how good he plays the role.
All right, I want to take a moment and bring on David Wright. How you doing, Dave?
I'm good, thanks.
We are talking about episode 2. You didn't miss much, so just jump right in here, Dave. Your thoughts on episode 2?
Okay, well, first of all, Robert is wrong.
care to support that statement, sir?
Just
on
in
any
general.
given thing, or on a
Well,
particular?
just on this.
Okay.
Geez, yeah, episode 2.
Wait. Why is he wrong? What's he wrong about?
Yeah. Well, for those of you listening, like it's been pretty much in the chat that everyone likes this show except for Robert. So that was the source of the joke.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mark, I think you just no-sold something.
I may have. Go on, Dave.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So episode 2, I think, if I remember, so that's when Bucky teams up with Sam and they have the fight on the trucks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we get a bit more of the Flag Smashers. Yeah, I wasn't prepared for episode by episode on this one, but I thought it was a decent enough episode. It sets up the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, team up. I thought the fight on the trucks was decent. Certainly good for a streaming level series fight. Yeah, get a bit more background on the Flag Smashers and what they're up to, and the bit at the end where they introduce Zemo. This show does a really good job of giving you something at the end of each episode to bring you into the next one. Very sort of anti first 3 episodes of WandaVision.
Okay.
I'm fine. Yeah,
Yep.
just
Move.
struggling to come up with stuff to say.
Okay.
Or are you talking to someone else?
Let's move on to episode 3, Power Broker. This is where we get into the stuff that Robert loves. Zemo offers to help.
Bite me.
I'd love to. Zemo offers to help with relish to help stop the Flag Smashers. So Barnes orchestrates a prison riot. All right, I should read the whole thing and not do this. And not do the stupid thing where we all interrupt Robert as he tries to get through a plot synopsis, arguing every little detail and point and word. But this was
not so easy, is it?
On this one, I had a person. It's like the one part of the show I really had a problem with, where like I know this is a world where robots and magic exist and aliens, but this was so stupid. I got taken out of the show momentarily. This is the worst prison escape I've ever seen, and maybe that's because I work where I work, and like it's a little personal. It's one of those Robert Mr. Wizard, it doesn't work that way thing, but it doesn't fucking work that way.
There's robots outside. We're on a floating island in the sky. I have a bow. None of this makes any sense.
Okay, I'll admit that while the prison escape doesn't make any sense, I did like the idea of the filmmaking where he escapes, and at the same time we are shown Bucky describing it to Sam, and Sam's just like, no, we're not doing that. And then Zemo walks through the door, and Bucky's like, yeah, I didn't exactly wait for your approval.
Look,
that
does
was really good storytelling.
Look, I'm not going to argue that point. Marvel does sizzle very well. They do style very well. Unfortunately, sometimes style and sizzle doesn't hold up under any kind of real scrutiny. And
wow, Mark, I'm gonna have to ask you to get out of my head. Why are you stealing my shtick, sir?
Oh, the image I have in my head right now that I can't share in mixed company, but the things I'm doing to your brain in your head. Anyway, yeah, I watched that and I'm like, when what's-his-face when Bodhi from The Wire escaped Boys Village, I bought it because it was Boys Village and it's not a maximum security incarceration facility. This motherfucker is in one step below the raft and he's just like wandering around and, they're distracted. I can sneak out this way. Not without magic, you can't, motherfucker. Ugh.
Mark your bingo cards, folks. He mentioned The Wire.
Yeah, I got it in. I'm like Brian Cage. I got to get my shit in. Right, Robert? Right?
He got into low security thanks to budget cuts and good behavior.
So they travel to Madripoor, a criminal sanctuary city island run by the mysterious power broker. High-ranking criminals.
Beleaguered sigh.
Hey, come on. How about points for all the Marvel fans when this episode premiered who said, ooh, Madripoor, I get this reference.
I was actually hoping you were going to say, ooh, the power broker, it must be Mephisto.
Oh, there were plenty of memes about that, too. personally thought we were that was below us.
Damn
No.
it, Alexis. I'm trying to find the
Hi,
spot,
welcome to
though.
the Radulich Broadcasting Network. Nothing is below us.
We are the underminer, madam. We may be below everyone else, but nothing is beneath us.
Fair enough. But no, Madripoor is a location that has shown up for years in the comics, especially for the X-Men. And it was actually really cool to see that get a reference, especially with a lot of fans who are still praying that this is somehow going to set up the X-Men universe. Even though we're still at least 5 years away from that.
High-ranking criminal Shelby reveals that the power broker hired former Hydra scientist Dr. Wilfred Nagel to recreate the super soldier serum. Shelby is killed when Wilson's identity is exposed, and you don't want us exposing us, madam. And every bounty hunter in Madripoor targets Wilson, Barnes, and Zemo. Sharon Carter, who has been living as a fugitive on the island, saves the trio and directs them to Nagel's lab. They learn that he created 20 doses of serum, which Morgenthau stole. The bounty hunters attack them, and Zemo kills Nagel in the chaos before finding a getaway vehicle. Carter stays behind, and Wilson promises to get her pardoned. The Flag Smashers raid and bomb a global repatriation council storage facility in Lithuania, while Zemo, Barnes, and Wilson search for them in Latvia. Barnes is confronted by Ao, a member of Wakanda's Dora Milaje. All right, so I'm not even going to give my thoughts just yet. I'll go last this time, so that everyone gets a fair chance, and I don't keep stealing everyone's thunder. Robert, you go first. The Power Broker. How much did you hate this episode, and how much did you want to punch me in the balls for making you want to review it?
Look, I don't want to hit you in the balls.
The face?
You have a son, you have a daughter. I'm sure one of them will inadvertently run into your crotch at some point in the next couple of months.
Why are you giving it that long?
I was going to say, doesn't your son tend to jump on your balls when you're lying on the couch?
Jump, kick, handstand, you name it.
The two things I was not expecting to discuss tonight is the ownership of Captain America's shield and this much about Mark's balls. I'm just saying.
I mean, we can talk for hours about my genitalia in great detail if you want, Andrew.
I think we've got to set that up as a Patreon episode.
Yes.
Stretch goals.
That would, in fact, have to be that, and stretch is the operative word there. If you wanted me to pinpoint a singular spot where this show lost me, it would be this episode, I think.
That Zemo's dancing.
I don't care. He's Zemo. No one cares. The fact that got turned into some stupid quasi-viral meme that apparently had like a 5 minutes of unreleased footage of Daniel Brohl doing bad club dancing is an indictment on the filmmakers and the entire process that went into this, that they wasted that much time and energy. The prison
what you need to see is the special edition where he has the dance-off with Tobey Maguire from Spider-Man 3.
Can we please make that a thing, Hollywood? We need.
I'm pretty sure there's a YouTube video of it.
No, it's on YouTube. I've seen it. It's awesome.
No. I want new shot footage.
For the record, that would be better than, again, most of the stuff that took place in this show. The prison break I could kind of be okay with. Again, it's really, really stupid. And none of that works that way. Not by... comically, doesn't work that way.
If only we had someone who worked in the corrections system to give some expert commentary on the podcast.
And he has. But again, I'm willing to go along with it a little bit. One of my big gripes that kind of starts becoming a thing in this particular episode, of course, the Zemo family moss covered three-handled credenza flight jet, complete with not even a decently sarcastic butler. That's number 65 on my list of complaints. Number 66 is armbar, because I promised Mark I'd get that reference in. You needed to do something new with Zemo, turning him into a billionaire playboy, genius, philanthropist, whatever else Tony Stark claimed to be. was certainly a choice, I suppose. They never quite find the right tonal balance with Zemo is kind of one of my problems. He's either a threat that they have to watch all the time, but then he's cracking wise and everyone's treating him like a joke. But then here's the Dora Milaje, but then it's all over the place tonally with that guy. But then he's making references to how a Marvin Gaye album is the quintessential expression of the African American experience. There's no consistency there, and it's a real problem for me. Getting to Madripoor. Pop quiz, ladies and gentlemen. The Power Broker is a nefarious individual who lives in Uptown, can get into all kinds of places, has dozens of contacts, and is hugely influential to the power structure of this particular establishment. Sharon Carter lives in Uptown, has dozens of contacts, runs a very profitable art theft business, and has dozens of contacts to move the levers of power within this particular governmental establishment such as it exists. I wonder who the Power Broker is.
You know she's probably a Skrull, right?
I don't care. Emily Van Camp is a Skrull in real life.
Stop. She's a perfectly serviceable actress.
Shut up. She isn't. That useless sack of crap.
Wait a minute now. What is your big hard-on against Emily Van Camp?
I had brothers who thought what was it? Underwood?
Revenge.
No. The CW show before Revenge. I can't remember. Something Wood. Everwood? I don't remember.
Yeah, Everwood, I think.
I'll take your word for it. I got stuck watching that crap.
You know you have legs, right? You can leave rooms with TVs in them.
Yeah, Robert acts like he's a fucking hot. Like, I know that like he also is part of what he does. He gives blood, and I know that a lot of stories he tells is, so I was giving blood, and porn was on, and I was forced to watch as as I clockworked orange, and they made my eyes open, but I was sitting there giving blood as a goodly man does. So I get that, but so maybe this was a situation where once again he was giving blood, and they clockworked orange his eyes open.
I can't explain some of the cultural significance to you of Family Home Evening, but just trust me, it's a thing.
Okay. Anyway, and so you were being tortured by Al-Qaeda, and they made you watch Emily Van Camp. Go on.
She's terrible. Sharon Carter's a terrible character. But for some reason, here we are. So, and look, again, I don't care in the sense that I don't care if she's a Skrull and the real Sharon Carter is on the ship with Nick Fury and they're... I don't know. I don't really care about that. I'm not emotionally invested in the Skrull storyline or anything that's attached to Secret Wars. It's just not my thing. But so the fact that these characters are so unbelievably stupid that they can't see what's right in front of their eyes really annoys me. And it is this episode now that I think about it. I'm going to ask a question, and there is, in fact, only one answer. Why did Zemo put on that stupid mask?
Because he does it in the comics.
Correct.
Because it'll look cool in the trailer.
Can I jump in about the mask?
Sure.
This actually did bother me, too. There was it wasn't a meme, but it was a picture that I saw making its way around Facebook before the show started, where somebody hypothesized that the mask was going to make an appearance as sort of an homage to Thanos. Like a character was going to be seen wearing it because, very similar to what the Flag Smashers were talking about, they preferred the world with the blip, or they were trying to channel the fear that Thanos once struck into all of civilization. We've seen that kind of a thing before with people who try to find something about a fear-based entity and try to emulate that or turn that into an icon that they can use to further their own agenda, you know?
Show would have been 100% improved if the Flag Smashers were actually the Thanos did nothing wrong people.
Yeah, but so I thought that was what the case was, and I was like, okay, if that actually happens, that's going to be awesome. Because I'll admit, the purple mask, when I saw him wearing it in the posters, I was like, how the hell are they going to make an excuse for him wearing that thing?
So badly designed, even. It doesn't look good.
So, yeah, when he just gets it out of that fancy car and puts it on, and there is no rhyme or reason for who had that mask other than a family member who was apparently very cold, I was just like, really? You took a potentially cool element of a ridiculous costume and you stripped it down to a fucking, oh, I get that. Oh, look, there it is moment.
He puts that
the
on.
funny part is,
he puts that on to pop the smarks. That's all it's for.
and you see, I think they could have had a really easy write-in on how that was a thing as well. I mean, they kind of established in Civil War that he was a member of I think some kind of Sokovian Special Forces unit, and that could have been a thing among the unit. Is them wearing that style of balaclava.
I liked it better.
And that's the thing that real military units do, is kind of adopt those kind of idiosyncratic pieces of dress sometimes.
I liked it better that he turned to the camera and went, "Look, everyone, my comic accurate costume," and everyone clapped.
Yeah. So that was really tough. And
It could have been the same as when Wanda got her crown in WandaVision.
No, nothing beats Catherine Hahn looking at the camera. And
that makes you a Scarlet Witch.
And that makes you a Scarlet Witch. Turn page. Oh, shit, I'm reading directly from the script.
That was a stage direction, not a piece of dialogue. Damn it.
We'll edit that out. Don't worry about it. Yeah, so, I didn't care for that. The action sequence here, the fight through the shipping crate, the bunch of shipping containers, wasn't especially good. Seen it done before, seen it done better. The end kind of stinger with one of the Dora Milaje showing up was at least somewhat interesting, but at that point, my interest, I'd been burned, and I have a whole thing about the Dora Milaje when it comes to this show in particular.
All right. Can I move on to someone else?
Yes, please. Anyone else?
All right, Andrew. Sorry, not Andrew. David. Sorry. You know what? When one of you isn't wearing a hat, you both look alike. David, go.
You can't see us. We're not on video.
It's my brother Dave. It's my other brother Dave.
Yeah. These are the Daves I know.
David, your thoughts on Power Broker episode? I wanted to get you in there so that you feel like you had something to say, and we didn't say all the things already.
Thanks. This one I was a bit lukewarm on. I'm not that interested in the seedy underbelly of the Marvel Universe. Like, you could do this on any other show. It's kind of like the problem with, like, Gotham, where it's like, let's make a cop show with, like, Batman character names. Like, okay, so, like, the most interesting thing about Batman is Batman. That's what people want to see, is Batman. So, hey, guys, great idea. Let's do Batman with no Batman.
So, and for more on, I'm not going to comment on this. I did an entire rant about this when Jesse and I reviewed the second season of Pennyworth, currently in the archives. Plug. But yes, Dave, I agree with you. Yeah. So like, if I go into the MCU, I want to see MCU stuff. Like superpowered peoples. Just see seedy underbelly, super mobster. It's like, okay. I mean, it's useful to explain how bad guys get super stuff, but otherwise it's just it's seedy crime drama, and I can watch better seedy crime dramas.
Madam, like you are not Wilson. You are not Vincent D'Onofrio's Wilson Fisk. You lose. Do not collect go. Do not collect $200.
Well, no one is Vincent D'Onofrio's Wilson Fisk. That is an unfair comparison.
And do not stare at the white painting in the corner.
Yeah, or say anything bad about Vanessa. But I thought Sharon Carter, I mean, she was fine. Like, I wouldn't say great performance. I wouldn't say terrible performance. It's just, she was there. She did the job that she had to do. Certainly having the flag smashers actually bomb a place and kill people, that sort of sets them up as...
Oh, right. That happened this episode.
Yeah. I mean, it was a short scene, but it sort of establishes, like the ends justifying the means in their eyes, and at what point, if your cause is just, but your methods of achieving it are not just, is it really worth it? Is it going to turn out as good as you think it will? That was an important moment in that it sort of makes them less sympathetic,
and yet somehow this stupid show will continue to try and tell you that they're sympathetic and tragic figures.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we already talked about this, in the first two episodes, but
Not yet, but we
I
will.
think they could have, for the Flag Smashers, I think they could have done a bit better job explaining the world situation. I was kind of able to piece it together. Like, okay, due to the blip, half the population went away, so there was apparently labor shortages, which resulted in mass migration from, I guess, poorer countries to wealthier countries, which I'm not really sure would happen if this were to really happen, but okay, fine. And of course, once everyone came back after Endgame, then, well, now we have twice as many people, and people are going to want to go back to their old lives, but, now the demographics have shifted, so what are we going to do? Do the people keep their new lives, or do they go back to where they came from to let the people who are back alive back in? Okay, interesting moral quandary. I think just reducing it down to we're against borders is kind of a bit overly simplistic and doesn't really get at the meat of the issue. And I mean, personally...
It could have been the subheading for this entire show.
Okay. I mean, personally, as the world is right now, I think borders still do serve a useful purpose. And it's just to have that sort of simplistic idea of if we just tore them all down, everything would be great. It's I don't think it's going to go as easily.
Can I interject something there? I think the idea of the borders debate can be nicely summed up in the controversy over the Eurozone and Brexit, because right in there, and maybe it's my misreading of the situation, but from what I understood, you had one argument of, at this point, does it really matter if we have cultural and physical borders between countries? We're using one currency. We're having this open trade zone. It's the 21st fucking century. Can we please evolve from 18th and 17th century ideas? And the people of England going, go fuck yourself. We're English in England, and we're very proud of our borders, and have you met our queen, and we'd like to take the pound back. Thank you.
And really, a dozen people sitting around in Belgium are not going to dictate the totality of foreign policy done by our country. Thank you very much. Now go piss off.
Right.
Yeah, I don't really want to get into all of that. Sorry, who's in there? Is that Andrew?
So I was going to jump in and say that's actually kind of an interesting example, because when you look at some of the ire that's being, oh boy, I'm going to make this sentence a little awkward now that I use that phrase. Some of the issues that are being brought up in Ireland again, the island of Ireland, not the Republic of Ireland, but between them and Northern Ireland regarding reestablishing a border, that's a legitimate concern that's being brought up because of the reestablishment of borders between the UK and European Union nations.
Yeah, these are all great points for discussion, though I don't think they're really relevant to the issue of the Flag Smashers' goal of removing borders as presented in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It's, they don't really call out any particular issue. Like there's no Brexit analog that I could see in the show, or Ireland analog.
You don't think that in a very Marvel-y kind of, we're pointing at it with a ham-fist way that's what they were getting at?
I don't think they fleshed it out enough to get that way. I think if you were to do a Brexit sort of thing, you would need to have a bit more of a Brexit analog of one country wanting to split away from others, whereas this is just, we've got people in the wrong places. The society's not set up to deal with people here anymore. We just want everyone to go back to where they were, and that's the easy solution. But of course, now you're tearing new families apart and fundamentally changing a bunch of people's lives for that. I didn't really see the one-to-one analog where I didn't see it as Trump's border wall or Brexit or Israel or
it's more touching on kind of the generalized philosophy.
There's
a general philosophy that's going around these days about just how the entire notion of national sovereignty as it pertains to borders is something that people are debating. And that's kind of as far as they go with it. They don't actually do anything interesting.
Yeah, there's no meat there. As much as I was hard on Picard, I will say at least with the way that they set up the sort of political landscape of that show, it was like, okay, I see that they're kind of taking a dig at Brexit or Trumpism, this sort of more xenophobic, us first, screw everyone else perception of things. So in that show, I don't think they really made good on exploring that, but I could at least see like, okay, this is kind of what you're making an analog to, whereas in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I thought, as Robert said, it was so sort of general that I couldn't really see it going like being a metaphor or an analog for those real world issues.
I just think Marvel has to be so careful. We are dealing with broad general audience fare. You can't get too in the weeds with stuff like this. You're going to lose half your audience that just came to see some guy hit somebody else with a shield.
Sure, but I mean, like there is controversial stuff like that in the show. Like, again, I don't know if you talked about this in the second episode, but the police scene, right, where they're sent to bring in Bucky, like the white guy, and they get out of the car, and the first thing they do is like, "Is this man bothering you, sir?" Calm down.
So let's imagine there's a writer's room, and they're putting together a list and a Venn diagram of all the themes, socio-political themes they want to cover in the show, and right in the middle is race, and it's the biggest one. And they're like, okay, but what about like Brexit and open borders and and governmental red tape and the loss of common sense? And like, okay, so these are all small things we can talk about and we can kind of point at, and we can look at, but we can't spend too long on them because because the rest of the audience doesn't care about any of that shit and just wants to see a guy hit another guy with a shield.
Yeah. But you have the racist cop scene, let's just call it that, and of course half the audience will be like, hey, yay, show those cops for what they are, so on and so forth. Then they'll have the other side is going to be, how dare you show cops that way, America, like that would be a divisive scene, like depending on which way you go on the issue of the whole police race relations thing in America. So, I can't say that they're playing it. You can't say that, well, they're playing it safe with this one because, like you say, race is front and center in this one. You have, Isaiah, a man who was abused and experimented on, by, the government and then all evidence of it buried. And you had, Steve Rogers basically getting the credit for being Captain America. Not to say anything wrong with Steve Rogers, the man himself. He had no knowledge of this, as far as we know, and he was just a good person who got, the finished serum. But the show is not pulling its punches with addressing, some, these big issues, and obviously you can see that, that's what they're getting at here. Like the whole show is basically Sam's conflict about being the next Captain America, despite having to deal with these. The legacy of the race relations in the United States, both in the past and as it is now. And not being an American, I can't really comment on the reality of the situation right now. I'm not there. But to get back to the flag smashers, like again, I don't think they're that defined enough. Like I've heard people saying, oh, they're clearly an Antifa allegory. It's like I don't quite see that either.
I didn't see that.
I mean, like in the broadest terms, maybe, but I think that's a bit more people sort of slapping labels on that suit their, preconceptions, or at least what they want to see.
I mean, if you really need a modern analog, they were kind of 99%ers in the sense of people feeling displaced. In a world where the 1% have so much wealth and so many other people feeling like they have to struggle uphill through a snowstorm financially.
Hang on, as someone I almost made the Antifa comparison, and then as the show went on, it became clear that that's not it's not a one-to-one analog, but I do think they're similar to Antifa only in the following way. How they are portrayed by the writers. The writers bend over backwards to try and portray these disruptive, murderous jackasses as somewhat sympathetic. I have a big thing about Sam's final speech to that effect, but I'll save it for the appropriate moment in the show.
Yeah, we'll get there in a few hours.
I know. And that is a constant refrain that is perpetuated about the Antifa organization on various mainstream media outlets and segments of various social media, depending on, again, where you are on that particular phase.
Let me ask you a quick question before you go on with this. It's really, really quick, yes or no. Do you think that the 99%ers were like a subset of Antifa or kind of their own separate thing? Because I think I'm envisioning them as a separate thing, but I might be wrong about that.
I always thought 99% was more of a Occupy Wall Street sort of thing.
It's the same thing. I'm probably just putting the wrong label on them, but yes, the 99%ers were the Occupy Wall Street people.
There's probably some overlap in the same way that there's overlap between, bearing in mind that I'm going to make a comparison here for the sake of ease of understanding. I'm not making a moral equivalency argument. The same way there's a lot of overlap between, the Ku Klux Klan and your local neighborhood racist organization. They're not necessarily affiliated, but there's probably enough overlap in terms of personalities and personnel that they're kind of the same. I imagine you're dealing with something more along those lines.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Like I would say broadly, like if you look at what we have been told of sort of what the Flag Smashers' motivations are, like they would seem to be more like leftist extremist, right? We're using violence to tear down all borders, possibly redistribute wealth. It's not too clear on that, but yeah. That's kind of all I could really say about the Flag Smashers, because again, we don't really get enough meat there, to really make a true one-to-one comparison to something real world. It's just sort of like a general far leftist organization that they have good intentions, but they're using bad methods to achieve those ends. And that's why they're the bad guys in this case.
I genuinely even argue that their intentions aren't all that good.
Well, I was going to say, I wonder if the plot of the story would be a little bit more clear and a little less convoluted if they had just been a political organization doing terroristy type things, and not further complicating it with them also being super soldiers, which is the kind of like Sam and Bucky went after them because they were super soldiers, not because of their issues with the
GRC, or Global Repatriation Council.
Yeah. That kind of gets tacked on, and I think that's one of the weaknesses of the narrative is that this is about Sam and Bucky taking down rogue super soldiers, and less about them taking down this organization that has a legitimate gripe with global political organizations and the way they're handling the post-blip socio-political environment.
Yeah, but so far it's shown as like that they like there's no secret agenda to the Flag Smashers. They are what they say they are. Like their goals are what they say they are. There's no bit where like some of the higher up leadership sort of says they think that we're really fighting for no borders, but really we're going to do this or something. It's
really we're trying to make a body for ourselves out of vibranium.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, that's a bit silly, but yeah. So I think that they are portrayed as having sincere motives. They think what they are doing is good. It's going to build a better world. Now, whether or not they are right about that, and in reality it will create a better world, that's where there is some debate. And again, like the whole, do the ends justify the means?
Alexis, any thoughts on the Power Broker episode?
Going more to what you guys have been talking about with the Flag Smashers, I think it does illustrate a point to discuss just what sort of point the world was in when everyone came back. I never really got the idea that there was no borders or that there was a labor shortage like you guys were talking about. I just more got the impression that after such a catastrophic global disaster, people came together more. We've seen elements when massive disasters hit certain countries, how people will tend to forget their petty differences and come together to support one another.
Yeah, in the shadow of 9/11 for 5 minutes, this country actually got along with each other and agreed on most things.
Exactly. That's the way I saw it with this. Not to mention that, yeah, there probably was a decent amount of influx of people moving from one country to another, but everything just goes crazy. I mean, when the blip is reversed. Again, we're glad that everyone was brought back, but we see more elements of just how much of a nightmare it is for trying to get everything organized. Hell, it was mentioned in the second Spider-Man movie that Aunt May was blipped, and when she came back, her apartment was being rented out by someone else. She jokes, it's like, the husband thought that his wife, or the wife thought her husband was having an affair with me, and the grandmother thought I was a ghost. And they're running a support group for people who are blipped, and you got to realize, imagine having that. Imagine you come back after 5 years, your house has been sold, your apartment's been rented, your job has been filled by somebody else.
Your significant other has moved on.
Yeah, exactly. You have no credit. I mean, we have that in the opening scene with Sam going to the bank to help his sister with the loan for the boat, and they're saying, and he's saying, well, you don't have any credit to your name. He goes, yeah, I was gone for 5 years. I was blipped out. And it's clear that they have sympathy for these people, but they don't have the economic resources right at that time to, cover that sort of a thing. Not to mention, as we've been talking with Jesse in the network chat, you're going to have a massive case of fraud also popping up. And they're probably trying to weed all that stuff out, too. How many people say, oh, I was blipped out and trying to get a bank loan or something? It's like, no, they weren't blipped out. They're just trying to take advantage of the system. Just the craziness that this country is having, and that, yes, a lot of them are probably saying, okay, we have to deal with our own shit right now. We cannot help other countries. We know that we know that you're having problems too, but guess what? We're overwhelmed. You see a lot of parallels to how people view immigration, the idea of these refugees coming to other countries seeking help, and they're saying, well, sorry, we kind of got our hands full. And they're like, well, we have nowhere else to go. And they go, well, that's not really our problem. There's this, line from I think it's a senator or something, in the final episode where he's talking about how they're going to cut support. And they go, well, we have these camps that we're going to move all these people to, but they're not really set up. And, if they go there, they're not really going to, they're not going to have enough space and probably not going to have enough food or running water or clean facilities. And the senator goes, don't care. Just the amount of the overwhelming craziness that happened. And that, yeah, there are undoubtedly thousands of people who have no home, no job, no insurance, no money, and the Flag Smashers are trying their best to help these people out. I mean, at the start, they're stealing freaking medicine. How many people, just came back from the blip and have medical conditions that they, can no longer treat? I mean, imagine being a diabetic, coming back from the blip, and then finding out now you can't get your damn insulin because, there's no record of you anymore in the medical, or in your medical files because you were blipped out. Imagine you were a cancer patient who got blipped out and then came back, and now it's like, okay, good luck getting back on your, chemo or something.
If I may, the Flag Smashers are actually advocating on behalf of the people who didn't get blipped.
I think what this series really needed was like a 30-second walk and talk, kind of West Wing style, where one character explains to the other the exact status of the world, who the Flag Smashers are, what their concerns are, and just do that extra little bit of world building to kind of set the stage of the conflict.
Agreed. They needed. It would have benefited them to spend a bit more time fleshing out the state of the world.
And I would say
the Flag Smashers.
Some of the vagaries that they did put into the way that this world was set up in terms of the politics and the players and stuff, I think it ends up being both a feature and a bug, because I don't think they wanted anything that was too much of a one-to-one comparison as to not raise anybody's ire, and they also wanted general enough that somebody could say, oh, hey, I recognize that.
Yeah.
But there is no easy answer, and there is no idea of who's the bad guy in trying to help these people who came back during the blip. one hand, yes, we want to help those. We're happy these people have come back. We're happy that our friends and family aren't actually dead. And we are happy that we actually get to, be with them again. At the same time, well, we now don't have enough jobs for all these people who came back. We now don't have enough homes for all these people who came back.
Again, the Flag Smashers are advocating for people who were around during the blip, who then got displaced when everyone else came back. Their point is not, let's help the people who came back. It's that the people who came back are screwing up a good thing that we had going.
Andrew, Alexis, did you want to make any other points, or are you good?
I think I'll get off my pedestal.
Okay. Andrew, we've been kind of kicking the ball around in kind of a general discussion, which I like. Did you have anything specific you wanted to add about episode 3, or are you good?
I'm going to hit a couple of real quick points. I'm going to say probably this episode for me was probably the most fillerish of the series so far. There were some things that, I think, I got a kick out of the breakout scene, even though, I mean, it's a heist scene. None of those things ever quite hang together from a logical point of view, but telling it in flashback and him showing up at the end was kind of a cute gag. I'll agree with Robert. I think, Zemo gets a little... Tonally, they do mess with him a little bit. I do like the fact that he's given a little bit more space to kind of expound on what his thoughts are in terms of superheroes, superpowered people, super soldiers, and kind of flesh that aspect of the character out from an ideological point of view relative to what he ended up doing in Civil War. I thought that was good. I'm going to actually defend Sharon Carter a little bit here, I think. I mean, yeah, she's been pretty... Emily Van Camp's a good enough actress, but the character itself has been a little bland during her previous appearances. I think this gave her a little bit more dimension as a much more cynical character who is somebody who, associated with herself with Avengers, came out on the wrong end of Civil War, and she didn't get to be a hero at the end. She lost her job, she had to go find a new calling in life. I will say, and we'll save this debate for later, I do not think she's the power broker. That also said, I had the momentary inkling that, holy shit, were they going to drop a Vincent D'Onofrio cameo in here as the power broker? But anyway, it's a decent enough episode. Sorry?
If only.
Yeah. Hashtag bring D'Onofrio back.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Not expecting to kill the conversation there. I'm sorry.
That was pretty much it, actually.
All right. I'm going to take a pause for the cause here and pay some bills and talk to you about Grammarly. Grammarly's AI-powered products help people communicate more effectively. Grammarly helps you write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and nearly anywhere else you write on the web. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. To download Grammarly today, go to getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork. Again, that's getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork to download Grammarly for free. All right.
If I was writing a script, it would have stopped me from having the whole Ire of Ireland comment.
I don't want to belabor this. I want to move on to the back half of the show. We're at an hour and a half here. We're this is going to be 3 hours by the time we're done, which is fine. But there's a lot of us here, and we're having a fun conversation. But I will say, just really quickly, I disagree with Robert. Big shock. I liked Emily Van Camp in this. As the spurned government agent who was loyal to her country, only to find that your country only loves you when they need you, and when they don't, they discard you like so much trash, which is a big theme of this entire show. I thought she did a good job of playing somebody who, well, I'm on my ass. What do I do now? And she had the right amount of frustration and chutzpah and cynicism that I think a character who went through that would have. I also like Zemo in this. I think he was so bad in Civil War, and no, Andrew, I don't want to have that argument with you again.
No, we're not having that argument tonight. We're definitely not having that argument tonight.
But it's been well established how much I hated the Zemo character and thought he was an unnecessary appendage in Civil War, and that really needed to be Tony and Steve's story. But here I thought he actually did serve a purpose, and I enjoyed his character, and I liked, Daniel Bruhl kind of playing up the, Euro trash Batman villain character. And he does more of that sort of thing as this goes on, and I like that. I like, I like the fact that Marvel on the small screen is sort of experimenting with different kinds of characters, and not everybody has to be a bombastic clown. Or Michael B. Jordan. So,
I like how Zemo in this one. It's more he has his own agenda, but he's not just like bad guy make bad guy face, just doing bad things because bad things. Like it's like I'm against super soldiers. You guys are hunting down super soldiers to find out how they're making more super soldiers. My goals and your goals are aligned, so I'm going to help you out. And every so often I'm going to run off to go and smash some super soldier serum virals or blow up a lab, but otherwise I'm not out here to kill the general public or do anything nefarious. And even at the end he pretty much turns himself into the authorities. It's like I've done what I set out to do. I'll take the consequences of that.
Yeah, I liked his presentation. I liked the performance. I liked the character in this, and I thought it's kind of an odd couple, sort of antagonistic relationship between him, Bucky, and Sam, especially him and Sam. There was some fun, dynamic, interpersonal relationships between those characters. So, Robert's wrong. Moving on.
Just before we move on, did we discuss the bank loan scene at all before I came on?
Sure did.
Okay, then I think you probably have covered everything that I could possibly say, so nothing further there.
The whole world is watching, David. Ayo gives Barnes 8 hours to use Zemo before the Wakandans take him. As Zemo killed their king T'Chaka in Civil War, we all know this. Zemo helps find Morgenthau at a funeral for her adoptive mother, where Walker and Hoskins intercept them. Wilson speaks with Morgenthau alone and attempts to persuade her to end the violence, but an impatient Walker, intervenes, and a fight ensues. Zemo destroys most of the serum before he is apprehended by Walker, who secretly takes the last vial. Ayo and the Dora Milaje come for Zemo, but Walker refuses to hand him over. In the ensuing fight, the Dora Milaje humiliate Walker while Zemo escapes. Morgenthau threatens Sarah, forcing Wilson to meet with her to attempt to persuade him to join her. Walker and Hoskins engage other members of the Flag Smashers, leading to another fight, in which Morgenthau accidentally kills Hoskins like you do. Enraged,
bullshit to accidentally.
I'm just reading. Don't yell at me. Enraged by his friend's death, like you would be, and having taken the serum because steroids, Walker uses the shield to kill one of the Flag Smashers in front of horrified bystanders who film his actions, and not a single person intervened because 2021.
Someone skipped media training.
Let me just get this out there. I like the fall from grace for Walker as it's told. Humiliation after humiliation when you're being told, aren't you the most specialist, blondest-haired, mannest, whitest man you've ever been that's ever held the American Captain America shield? And, nothing works out for him and nobody likes him and he has to sit alone at lunch and he finally just fucking snaps and kills a guy. All right, I'm with it. I get it. It was appropriately horrible, and it was a good arc for that character that needed to be told, so I liked all that. I'm kind of with Robert, where, the Dora Milaje, aren't they the most perfect human fighting force that ever fought a person? Who cares? It's just ninjas doing ninja stuff. Only these are
vibranium.
These are African ninja people throwing vibranium spears. Who the fuck cares? The only thing that's good about that is I kind of liked Ayo and her interactions with Barnes as they had history, as she untraumatized him from his time as the Winter Soldier when he was in Wakanda. So that's kind of cool, and I like more character stuff than I like ninjas throwing spears. The other thing, Sam's interaction with Morgenthau, Anthony Mackie has so much earnest, and he's such a great performer that even with kind of ham-fisty dialogue, his interplay with Morgenthau was entertaining to me and earnest and heartfelt. And so when Walker disrupts it all and it all goes south after that, you know, I it felt something. I was like, oh shucks, you know, we had something there for a moment and it all got ruined by stupid Walker.
Yeah, where we all go, damn it, Johnny.
Yeah, I hate that trope so much, where it's like things are going good and then some idiot, you know, barges in and it's like, you were setting me up the whole time. No, I wasn't. I didn't know anything about this. It's like, no, it's too late. I don't believe you. Now we must fight forever.
Yeah. But I thought it was played well here with the actors doing it, and sometimes, as stupid as a trope is, sometimes, you know, performers can elevate stupidity. And, you know, Walker taking the serum played right into his character after all the various humiliations, so that all worked for me. Alexis, I'll start you off first, and then Andrew, and then David, and then Robert can go at the end. Go ahead.
Can we just all agree, at least, that it was hilarious for the brief moment in the fight where Johnny Walker is getting his ass handed to him by the Dora Milaje, and Sam and Bucky are standing there like, "Can we do something?" And what was it? Looking good, John. And finally, like, all right, we'll help. Like, can we just all agree that moment was great?
It was very funny.
Yeah. No. First of all, again, credit to the filmmaking. Having the scene where he actually takes the super soldier serum off screen was a very smart move. We all know he's going to take it, but I love the idea that we don't actually see him take it, and then he, you know, throws a guy across the room, and we're all like, oh, shit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we all know what's happened. Very good bit of storytelling. I was actually happy to see a little bit more at the Dora Milaje. Again, I was hoping to see more of Bucky's time in Wakanda. I had a theory going on for a while. In the comic books, Shuri ends up in a romantic involvement with, Martin Freeman's character.
The president from Deep Impact?
Huh?
No, Martin Freeman.
Oh, Martin Freeman.
You
Yeah.
deaf.
Yeah, Everett Ross. She ends up in the comics. She ends up having a thing with Everett Ross, which I figured they weren't going to do because there's a massive age difference there. So I actually
Since when has that stopped anyone in Hollywood?
Yeah, no kidding. But I actually had a theory that they were going to switch it and have Shuri basically have a thing with Bucky, that he was going to return as the White Wolf and just sort of be, you know, by her side, and, you know, they were going to develop feelings for one another or something. I don't know. I'm not much of a shipper, but that was my theory. But
could still happen.
But obviously that's kind of been, you know, we don't know what they're going to do with Black Panther anymore, so that theory is not really going to work anymore. But yes, I was happy to see Io. This actress who plays her, I've seen her in a few other things. She's really, really good. And I'm really glad that they gave her some more screen time. Not that the actress who played Okoye isn't, you know, just fucking amazing. But I really like this.
Isn't it Denai Guerrero who plays?
Yep, Denny Garai.
Yeah.
Denny Garai, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I can never remember how to pronounce her name, so I was a little on the nervous side there.
Just call her Michonne. People who know will get it.
There's some truth to that. Just the scene of her with the one quick move dismantling Bucky's arm was freaking hilarious. I love it. It's just like boink boink fall, and even Bucky's just like, that could happen. There was a button that does that.
Yeah, that was amusing.
Yeah, and yeah, the ending. The thing that caught me was not only was this a, you know, unwarranted attack and kill of one of the Flag Smashers. This was the Flag Smasher who previously had admitted he admired Captain America growing up. I mean, obviously it was Steve Rogers' Captain America, but the idea of being murdered by, you know, somebody who is dressed as your childhood hero is just disturbing as hell. And it was very poignant. And that scene of Johnny standing up with the shield covered in blood as all these onlookers are watching and recording on their phones is very, very haunting, and it was well done.
Andrew?
I'm not going to lie. I think this was maybe the best episode of this series. I think there's a number of character points that work really well on it, and I think bringing out some of the best aspects of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm actually just rewatching part of the episode right now, and the scene where Ao or Io?
I think her name is Steve. Go on.
Okay.
Call it. I'll know who you're talking about.
When Io is kind of breaking Bucky of his programming is a really, really good scene, and it brings something of that character forward. Seeing the Dora Milaje was fun. I think we've talked about the fight scenes were a lot of fun. And here's where I want to talk about where I think this episode works in terms of the strengths of the MCU. And, we all make jokes. I understand that reference. The MCU being self-referential, I think in this case it certainly is. And I'm going to call back to actually a scene from the first Avenger where I believe it was Stanley Tucci was having the conversation with Chris Evans right before he undergoes the transformation, and he talks about what the serum does. He says it makes good great and it makes bad worse. Mm-hmm. And he says, don't worry about being a perfect soldier, worry about being a good man. And you start to see that happen when you apply this to John Walker, who is somewhat the perfect soldier, but who is also a little insecure and a little damaged and everything like that. And when you apply that logic of the serum to him, those are the parts of the character that get turned up to a 12, along with all the strength and everything like that. So when you see those darker elements of him earlier in the series and his kind of impulsiveness and impetuousness, again, that gets turned all the way up. And when you have a character who has trauma, who maybe hasn't dealt with it all the way, that gets turned all the way up. And thus, when he has that moment, which 100% agree with Alexis, is shot and kind of built to so well, it makes perfect sense. And I think that, like I said, just kind of pulls it together really well.
Bill Cosby once said of, I think it was cocaine, he was like, what is it that makes cocaine so wonderful? And he says, well, it intensifies your personality. Yes, but what if you're an asshole? Is the joke. And that's kind of the way I regarded the super soldier serum. With the same thing about, like, the myth versus the fact about steroids, where if you have it in you to be, an overly, like, violent and overreactive and possibly bipolar person, yes, having that much male hormone in your body is, going to make you make bad decisions. But if you're not inclined to be that way, you're not suddenly going to become the fucking Hulk. And that's, again, those are the two things I thought about Bill Cosby's cocaine joke and steroids when it came to the super soldier serum, and how Steve was already a good person with a good heart that had an anchored moral compass, as opposed to Walker, who may have been a decent person, one never knows, but had just gone through a series of humiliations, and he took this drug in the shadow of that. So that all worked for me, Andrew.
Definitely. I think I agree with all that. I will say there's one other thing involving the serum that I did like, and I think if they had done this, it would have been a major mistake. And it was the moment where the serum capsules were on the ground, and I think it was Carly and Zemo were in the scene, and he looks down at it for a second, and I don't think it crossed it, but it was almost like they were framing it up as is Zemo going to take one of those? And no, he smashes them all, which I think does the character good service in terms of him being kind of faithful to his position on the whole thing.
David?
Yeah, so one thing I like about Walker, and we'll find this more in like the last episode, is he's not an evil person. He's not an evil caricature. He's a complicated person with multiple dimensions to his character. So even though he does a horrible thing at the end of the episode, like he kills this guy that wasn't even directly responsible for the death of his friend, which, by the way, Battlestar, what a great name. Can I get a so say we all?
So say we all.
Thank you. So say we all.
I do love that scene, and I think it's the second episode because that was the character's name in the comic books. And when they're talking with Bucky and Sam goes, yeah, I'm Battlestar. And they're just like, Battlestar? Are you kidding me? I love that little, it's like, when you actually say it out loud, yeah, a lot of the comic book superheroes' names are kind of silly sounding.
Yeah. Who are you? I'm Doctor Strange. Oh, we're using our made-up names now. Well, then I am Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a good one. Yeah, so I do appreciate that. You know, like they're good at sort of operating in that range of gray, which I think is a bit more realistic. You know, and you know, I love a good, you know, morally perfect hero fighting a dastardly villain and good triumphs over evil. You know, I like the simplistic storytelling of that at times, but it's also nice to kind of get into a bit more of, you know, the realistic, you know, grays of the world. Like, again, we were mentioning, you know, the Flag Smashers, although they're doing bad things, they're doing it for what they believe are good reasons that will result in a better world. So you know, kudos to making Walker a bit more than just an evil caricature of something, making him an actual multi-dimensional person.
I want to piggyback on that because Robert's going to yell and scream about this later, so let me just get this out now. People who would ordinarily be under... I talked about this a little bit with Truth, Red, White, and Black. I was speaking specifically to the people who resonated with Trump's campaign speeches, but you can say this about any number of people under any given circumstances. When people are comfortable, when they have bread and they have circuses and they are doing fine and they feel like dreams are achievable, you're generally not going to see these people become radicalized. And then you pull a book of Job on them and you take it all away, and they can, and some of them still won't be. Some of them will be Job, but many of them will. Many of them will turn to their worst impulses. They'll point to their nearest neighbors and say it's their fault, and they will. And many of them will also take to extreme circumstances. The idea, the show deals in that sort of moral gray area of the best of us can have a very, you know, kind of like Joker. The best of us can have a very bad day and become radicalized and take to violence when pushed far enough. And, you know, and so to the degree in which Sam starts to get into later on in the final episode, you know, one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist, and you probably shouldn't go around throwing the word terrorist out there when good people were pushed into a bad situation. That's what they're talking about. That's plenty to kick around and debate and find fault with, but therein lies the issue the show is maybe clumsily trying to deal with. You know, the idea of when comfortable people no longer feel like the, you know, dreams are possible and their whole lives get turned upside down, they may in fact make very bad decisions and do very bad things in the name of trying to reclaim what they feel is rightfully theirs, which is their right to, you know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, just to expand on that too, is there's also this tendency a lot to sort of straw man, like the other side, depending on where you sit on certain issues, you know, to just view them as the worst examples of that group. And like, you know, that's natural. We focus on the most negative things. It's just the way our brains are wired. And, you know, once you actually start to kind of listen more broadly to each side, you start to see it's like, oh, okay, like this isn't as crazy or as bad as I thought. I understand why people, you know, are thinking these ways or making these decisions. You know, so that's kind of why I like to have a lot of nuance in characters. I don't just want a character to sort of be this flat sort of straw man example of whatever it is they're critiquing. To sort of say, okay, like, you know, what they're doing is bad, but I understand that there is not necessarily bad motives behind it. And, you know, like, I appreciate that, and I think we could use a bit more of that. But to get a bit more into the specifics of the show, like, I really find that the moment where, Walker kills the, Flag Smasher, this is sort of...
He kills
like,
a red shirt.
I mean, yeah, it's not, let's say, important, but, you know, he kills someone. He kills someone while everyone is, like, recording it on their phones and transmitting it to the web, which, you know, I understand bloodlust. He's upset his best friend was just killed in front of him, but, you know, like, you're Captain America. You're wearing, you know, the flag of the country you represent. You have been picked out of every service member, you know, within the United States to represent the country. Maybe murdering someone in cold blood, you know, in public might not be a good idea.
It was not cold-blooded. That was by definition not cold-blooded murder. The only thing Walker did wrong was do it in front of people with cameras.
Okay, it was passionate. In passion, yeah, I guess cold-blooded would be like without emotion. So yeah, I see your point there.
He's in the middle of not just hot-blooded, but he's literally in the middle of a combat scenario. 10 seconds ago, his best friend got a hole punched through his chest and was turned into a donut. Yeah, sorry, the rules of engagement are still in play. He did nothing wrong by killing that guy.
Okay,
I've made my case there, but so moving on.
Hang on.
Okay, Mark.
Hang on 1 second. A little beyond the pale, he did nothing wrong by killing a guy who had submitted and given up.
He didn't give up. He said, I didn't do it.
Dude,
he was kind of like on his back with his hands up and.
Yeah, let's put it this way, and I don't want to get off on a tangent.
In MMC terms, this was a submission.
I don't want to get off on a whole
He was no longer
tangent,
intelligently defending himself.
But
yes.
There's a conversation we are now dancing around, which I'm not comfortable dealing with, and I don't want to when we're supposed to be talking about a fun Marvel show. But I'm going to go ahead and say this very plainly, and let's just move on. There's a guy on the floor basically saying, I'm done, I give up, stop hitting me, and then he killed him out of rage. Let's move on.
Yeah. So to get more on where I'm really going with this is, so like at the beginning, Sam gives up the sword, like he said, not the sword, sorry, the shield. Never going to let me forget that one. Okay, so he surrenders the shield to the Smithsonian, as we later find out, because he's conflicted about a black man in America taking up the iconography of the flag and becoming Captain America, but because he refused to take it up, even though he was basically, given it by Steve Rogers, like, you are worthy. It's almost, like getting Thor's hammer. But because he neglected to take on that responsibility despite his internal conflict, it went to a lesser man. The U.S. government said, like, well, if you're not going to use it, we will, and we're going to do it our way, the U.S. government way. James Walker, the whitest guy decided upon by the whitest government, sort of thing. Like I'm talking like the subtext of the film here. And so I think that sort of plays a bit into Sam's decision in the end to take up the shield, realizing if I don't do this, it'll just go to someone else, and I have no say in who that is. Which I thought was sort of a good nuance to the situation. And to get more also into Sam is you see like Walker's approach to the Flag Smashers is like, I must follow my orders. They are terrorists. We must find the enemy and destroy them. Whereas Sam's like, I want to talk to them. I want to try and reason. Let's try diplomacy first. And in that moment, you kind of see why one of the reasons why he Steve gave him the shield is because he's a good man. He's going to try and solve this problem first, peacefully, trying to minimize bloodshed and empathize with the other side, instead of just going in guns a-blazing because they're the other side. So I think those were sort of the good moments or things brought up by this particular episode.
Robert?
Jeez, this episode.
Now we're down to 3 grievances.
The dead Madani is not the Madani from the Punisher series.
I was wondering how long before you were going to bring that one up.
I had hope for one brief moment.
Because they're not going to bring her in, are they?
I really hoped she was dead. I really did. Okay, my joking there aside. Sam's conversation with Carly, in a different version of this story, it probably works for me. Sadly, at this point, it's just chapter 697 of bullshit moralizing that they do.
Can you flesh that out for me in 50 words or less? What you mean? Because I'm a little dumb. Explain it to me a little bit better.
This show bends over backwards to try and make these people sympathetic.
Mm-hmm.
It will give them every opportunity to expound their case. And it will try to pretend like her tying up people helpless in a building and then burning them alive does not make her a terrorist. That's bullshit.
Okay.
And yet somehow we must moralize on these, we must pontificate on these subjects for hours. This is what I mean when I said this show did not have a 6-hour story to tell. Because we have these same people say the same things over and over and over and over again. It's tiring, and it's stupid, and it's poor writing.
I'm not going to argue with you there.
The Walker thing. I liked the moment because it's a very clear... They do some very clear self-referential stuff visually. With the same moment, essentially, from Civil War, when Cap has the opportunity to kill Tony. And instead, because he's Captain freaking America, drives the shield into the arc reactor and powers Tony's suit down so he's helpless.
Bingo.
Because Steve Rogers is Captain America. John Walker is...
U.S. agent.
He's a good soldier, but he's not Captain America. And I like the way they made that point. I genuinely do. I also, and again, this goes to the pathological desire to portray the lead terrorist as a sympathetic character. She murdered a guy.
I wouldn't say he's sympathetic, more understandable.
And then, well, look, she kills a guy, and then 5 seconds later I'm supposed to feel bad for her when she watches someone get killed? Maybe don't murder people. Just a thought.
Well, Captain America murdered a lot of people.
So did Sam Wilson. Hang on. Here's my other thing about this.
Well, hang on. Hang on. I don't know my own strength, and I accidentally kill a guy is not the same as I killed a guy with intent.
Decapitated. Let's just say that's what they're kind of inferring from that scene.
I would have rather they actually decapitated the guy. And no, Carly knows her own strength.
No, she doesn't. They've had these powers for 5 fucking minutes.
She's been a super soldier since the beginning of this show.
Which was 20 minutes ago.
Bullshit. Months.
Okay.
She knows what she can do. Look, I might grant you unintentional murder. Fair enough. She's amped up and hit him harder than she meant to. Okay. She didn't sit down and plan out, I'm going to kill the black guy. She planned out to kill Captain America.
Hang on. And I don't want to get off on a tangent here, so this is really going to be a 10 words or less argument between you and me.
Okay.
You and me are going to have a fight. You are a trained fighter. I'm a fat, middle-aged guy. I take steroids. You take steroids. The steroids don't make me a better fighter.
Entirely correct.
You would still kick my ass.
Sure.
She, in effect, took steroids. He took steroids. He's a trained fighter. She isn't a trained fighter. She's just really strong now.
No, she's only...
Why are you contending that she knows what she's doing?
Okay, you're the one who... You guys are the ones who tried to blow the entire sequence with the semi-trucks. You want to tell me what she did in there is not trained fighting? Again, I'm calling bullshit.
All right, valid point. I moved to strike the previous argument from the record, Your Honor.
And again, I will grant you she maybe didn't mean to kill the guy in the sense that I'm going to punch a hole through his chest. Okay, I'll grant you that. Fair enough. You still did it. You still meant to hit him. And if you hadn't hit him, you would there's zero sympathy here. I would actually go so far as to say I'm not terribly understanding of it. But again, we get maudlin music, and God, and this is going to dovetail into the beginning of the next episode. But Sam Wilson, in the opening bit of this entire show, gleefully murders his way through GSP's men in an air fight over Tunisia. And we cheer because, sure, it's a great sequence. John Walker kills one terrorist with one shield, and we must have a deep, maudlin, morose, melancholic monologue about the nature of superheroes. Blow me, you sanctimonious dickheads.
You know what?
Yeah, but that's going back to the whole point of heat of combat versus guy on ground basically tapping out, and then I'm going to take his head off with a shield.
You don't get a 5-second rule when 3 seconds ago You contributed to your buddy killing a guy.
When you're putting the Sam Wilson opening scene versus this, side by side and going, why is it okay here but not here? I kind of see your point. I think I get your overall point. But I cannot. Just so that we can move on with this, I still cannot abide by any argument that says it was okay to fucking kill him with the shield. It just wasn't.
Yeah. What threat was he posing at that time at which, in that exact moment that lethal force was justified? Not to get too legalistic, but that's where it is.
Look, that's a fair point, and I'm not saying that Walker shouldn't face consequences for it. When I say wrong, I don't mean legally wrong. Because
guys,
hang on.
We've been talking.
Yeah, I know we're getting into this way too deep.
Can I just say that the other thing that I watch these shows, especially one like this, and I just have to go, Frank Castle had it right. How many problems would have just been solved?
Had he shot his way through Queens? Truth. Wilson and Barnes demand the shield from Walker like you do, leading to a fight in which Walker destroys Wilson's wingsuit. Wilson and Barnes take the shield, breaking Walker's arm. Barnes finds Zemo in Sokovia and hands him over to the Dora Milaje, while Walker receives an other-than-honorable discharge and is stripped of his Captain America title. Afterward, Walker is approached by Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine de Wilson de Schmagegi, whatever it is Al Bundy, the news reporter and family married with children, says.
Some woman that we have no idea who she is, but apparently she's government somehow.
97 names.
De Habsburg, de Windsor, de Bourbon.
Just stop.
I was just going to say, from what I've heard, she apparently gets a decent introduction actually in Black Widow. The rumor is she's going to make an appearance in that. And don't forget, Black Widow was supposed to come out.
This must be your first day in the MCU, Robert.
Look, for the record, the very moment Julia Louis-Dreyfus walks on screen, I was done. I would have been out. That's
Julia Louis-Dreyfus?
Julia Louis-Dreyfus. You know who I meant. The very instant she comes on screen and goes, boy, these boots were not made for walking, I would have paused. I would have shut it down. I would have never watched another second of this stupidity. The last thing this show needed was bad comic Nick Fury.
So Walker is approached by Elaine from Seinfeld. Wilson leaves the damaged wingsuit with Torres and visits Bradley, who states his belief that a black man cannot and should not be Captain America, at which point Mark Radulich cried incessantly. Just boo-hooed, hyperventilated, had to rewatch all 5 seasons of The Wire, the whole 9 yards.
I mean, that happens every day, doesn't it?
Not every day. I have to go to work. Wilson returns
You get
home.
to watch The Wire in real life.
Yeah, it really. No, none of the people I work with have the charisma of anyone in The Wire. Wilson returns home and helps fix the family boat for 8 fucking hours, with assistance from several locals at Barnes, who delivers a briefcase from the Wakandans to Wilson. Barnes and Wilson train with the Shield for 64 weeks and agree to move on from their past and work together. The Flag Smashers plan an attack on the GRC conference in New York City and are joined by Batroc, who Carter has secretly hired. In a mid-credit scene, Walker builds a new shield from scrap metal and his war medals. As Alexis has said, we've been at this now for almost as long as the training montage, which went 64 weeks. So all I will say is, as much as I'm making fun of it, the thing I like about the Marvel TV shows so far is that they do allow for time to be spent to have human character moments, and it's not just the Avengers roller coaster thrill ride that some of the Marvel movies tend to be, where they can't stop for nothing, no how. So I appreciate it that much. Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, this was Truth is a little tricky episode for me. It's a really good character piece, I think, in terms of, I mean, again, going back to the conversation with Isaiah is great. Kind of taking the characters to where they need to be prior to the finale works really well. Obviously, we have a montage because you need a montage.
Even Rocky had a montage.
Thank you, Dave. A couple other points. I think probably the one thing this episode needed was it needed almost a little bit more setup of what was going to happen in New York and what the stakes were in New York. Because I think that's something we hit the ground on the next episode a little too fast, and it doesn't quite set up all those pieces. It's kind of the one I can explain the best is Age of Ultron. You don't quite understand the logic of how that's all going to work out. One other thing on this one, I absolutely love the fight at the beginning. I think the choreography between Falcon and Winter Soldier, and we'll call him U.S. Agent at this point, was I thought they did some really creative stuff in there in terms of that fight scene and everything along that line. I'm fine with we'll just call her Val because that's what she has to be.
No,
called,
Elaine
so.
from Seinfeld.
She said,
Elaine with Seinfeld.
Only call me that in your head. Don't actually say it to me.
Also, the U.S. Army said to John Walker, "No pension for you." Anyway,
Boy,
sorry.
Seriously, what a dick move that was.
Oh, I actually had a whole conversation with my wife about that one, where if they wanted to do that to him, they should have just dishonorably discharged as opposed to an other than, which actually does apparently still entitle you to benefits. But anyway, going back to her, okay, new character. For the record, my theory is that she's the power broker.
She's not the power broker. God, this is not. You guys are overcomplicating this. Sharon Carter's the power broker. This is bad Nick Fury clone, while Samuel L. Jackson is up with the Skrulls doing whatever the hell he's doing.
Hey, I'm going to take this opportunity then to jump in and say, because I forgot to mention this. Much to Robert Winfree's chagrin, I can't hate this show because of this conversation between Isaiah and Sam. Between that and Bucky's story about making amends, these are two things that are very important to me, and as much as Marvel can handle anything, I think they were handled okay. But I really, really liked what Isaiah had to say to Sam and Sam's reaction to it and the whole conversation about what it means to be, a black man in America. And look, the show's not perfect. This conversation clearly, shows that. But it's hard for me to hate the show when they're dealing with stuff like that, which it's sometimes it's a little hard to find in modern fiction and modern television. It's out there, but you really got to look for it. So it was nice to see it in something as mainstream as this. Go ahead, Andrew. I didn't mean to.
Yeah. That was actually, you probably put that a lot more succinctly and a lot better than I could. And really, that was about my thoughts on episode 5.
Okay, Alexis.
Honestly, this scene, I didn't really think there was much to talk about with this episode. I did enjoy the sequence of them fixing the boat and the whole neighborhood coming together. It's nice to have little moments like that aren't exactly like majorly superhero types, but just to see a nice little comforting moment like that. And the crazy amount of memes that were started when everyone saw Bucky flirting with Sam's sister. No, the thing that got me hyped, like I said, was the build-up toward the end and seeing Johnny Walker building his own shield. Mm-hmm. That really got me, especially when you see him actually put his Medal of Honor as part of it. Just, I don't know, just the symbolism of that is very powerful.
Robert?
I'm with you guys, with you, Mark, in particular. The interaction between Isaiah and Sam Wilson is genuinely great stuff. It's a really well-written sequence. It's very well acted. Anthony Mackie is a very good actor. I actually think they don't give him enough to do in terms of his acting throughout this show, which is kind of a shame.
Mm-hmm. He does a lot of reacting to other characters.
And I think I'll jump in here for a quick second. I wonder if that's kind of intentional because they're trying to position that character among a lot of different kind of counters, because there are, there's a counter in Bucky, and there's a counter in Zemo, and there's a counter in Carly, and there's a counter in John Walker. And I wonder if that was somewhat intentional but overdone to kind of say that he's got these different point of views that he's trying to process, and maybe they didn't give him enough time to actually process those inputs.
That's a very good point, Andrew. They might have purposely downplayed the Falcon's character in this so that the audience can kind of project themselves onto him as he's being influenced by all of these different attitudes and characters and themes, and so he's sort of the audience stand-in for a point of view character, if you catch my meaning.
Definitely, and I think there's also an element here of we're also going, and again, this goes back to the point of Sam not only knew Steve Rogers as Captain America, but he knew Steve Rogers as Steve Rogers, is that Steve was always somebody who was always morally certain. He always knew exactly what he was going to do in any situation on that, and part of this is Sam figuring out how does he orient himself to be in that same way, with that level of certainty.
Yeah. There's a degree of, in terms of an arc, of him not, being very uncertain and struggling with his place in the world as a black man, and trying to get to that point of, no, this is my moral center and this is the way, and we are going to go forward from this point with 100% assurance. Go ahead, Robert. We all kind of jumped in on you.
No, it's fine. It's a valid point to bring up as far as the craft goes. I'm also kind of with you in that I like giving characters some downtime moments to just kind of not be running from fight to fight. So that's always welcome, and especially in shows like this where you have the time to do so. I hate Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I don't enjoy her work. I never have.
So we're not going to review Veep then?
I don't care what you do with your free time, Mark.
Go on.
Again, Wyatt Russell, does some really great work in this episode. From the beginning, when he's kind of clearly in shock and processing everything that just happened, I like the fight that they have with him. It's not my favorite 2-on-1 fight that the MCU's ever put together, but it's not a bad one.
Wasn't it supposed to be kind of a mirror of the final fight from Civil War?
It is, in some respects, yeah. There's some callbacks to that visually. And for the record, that is maybe the best. That's not the best fight in the history of the MCU, but it's definitely pretty high. It's fairly high on the list.
So even calling back to Infinity War a little bit with trying to pull the shield off his arm.
A little bit, yeah. There was definitely a little bit of a callback there. So I'm okay with, again, that was mostly okay. Here's, I think, where my big gripe with the Dora Milaje comes from. One, there's never an adequate explanation given for why these people are as undefeatable as they are, and it really annoys me. To be fair, I know they train, I know they work hard. That's all fine and dandy, and them being able to hang.
Everybody in the Marvel universe is a ninja. Why are they extra ninja?
Yeah, exactly.
Vibranium.
Oh, stop! That is not.
Vibranium and Quantum. That is the only two reasons anything happens in the MCU.
There was Vibranium, there's the Quantum Realm, and yeah.
And a wizard did it.
I was like, I think we broke Mark, guys.
That's right. I have a meeting this Thursday, and that's going to be my answer to anything that I get asked about my job. Vibranium, a wizard did it, or Quantum.
Armbar. Here's my big gripe with the Dora Milaje as far as it goes in this show. Why are they there?
Because Wakanda forever.
Hang on. I mean this in all sincerity. My impression, and maybe this was wrong of me, was that they were there because if Zemo was in custody, they were going to let that play out. If he's not, guess what? He killed our king. We're going to take him back to Wakanda and execute him. Or put him on trial, convict him, and then execute him, depending on the order. We might even execute him first, then put him on trial and convict him.
That's what I'd do.
Why do we need them to take him to the raft?
Have we established that Wakanda has a death penalty?
Ugh.
I don't think we know much about Wakandan legal
Guys,
system.
Alexis is going to yell at us again. No, don't do this.
We haven't even seen a prison in Wakanda.
It's made of vibranium. Go on, Robert.
Look, there's an entire gimmick with the passing of their mantle of king where you can kill the other guy. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that while their society, one purely insular, might not have needed to have one, in the event of something like murder of the king, they might tie you up and let the war rhino run through you. I don't know.
I believe in Wakanda law. For any law that is broken up to and including the killing of the king, they just send you to Detroit.
Well, that is, in fact, worse than death.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, wait a second. Sorry, now that I'm thinking about this, maybe not, because when you go back to the end of Civil War, T'Challa could have killed him, but he said, I will not let vengeance consume me, and you're going to rot in prison instead, so...
Yeah, it could be the will of the king that he doesn't get killed.
All right.
Yes.
Then they shouldn't have been out there at all. Like, that's my other gripe. Like, there is no logical sequence of events whereby the Dora Milaje show up as necessary only to turn him over to the same authorities that were housing him beforehand. There is no reason for it then. They either needed to be there to bring him back to Wakanda to face justice there, or they needed to kill him outright, or they needed to not be there at all. This was a ridiculous half measure, and of course we can't do any of that because we want Zemo for the sequel.
Well, it's more fun having them there than just generic police officers, and also Bucky has to ask them to make the new Captain America suit.
And believe it or not, there's actually a better way to handle this, even if you do want to keep Zemo alive for the sequel, even though I'd rather you killed him. He knows the Dora Milaje are coming for him. That's previously established. Have him surrender to avoid their wrath.
Which he kind of did.
No, they caught him.
Well, there's the bit where he's like standing at the memorial for the Sokovia disaster, and Bucky goes up to him, points a gun at him, says, you messed with my mind, it made me do terrible things, this is my vengeance, and he pulls the trigger, and I removed all the bullets. And then after that, he just walks away, and then the Dora Milaje walk up, and Zemo's like, okay, I'm good to go now.
Also, you kill him, you grant his wish.
I don't care.
I'm sorry you don't care about visual information imparted to you by the film.
Get him, Dave.
Look, no. When I say this, I don't care that he wants to die. I care about how the other characters react around that, and whether or not they're acting in a manner that's internally consistent. I might grant you that they are under orders not to kill him. Then that needs to be a bit more expressly stated. And yet,
I thought them not killing him made it pretty clear.
No, like when Ayo talks with Bucky, she says we're coming for Zemo in a very threatening manner. Like that if their purpose is to get him reincarcerated, her stance needs to be put him back in jail.
To be fair, threatening manner is kind of the Dora Milaje's default form of expression.
Sure, they don't have anything else. I'll give you that as well. It reeks of MacGuffin Deus Ex Machina so that Sam can get his vibranium suit. That's all this is.
You good?
It's almost midnight. I want to go to bed. Can we please move on?
I was trying to. Go ahead, Dave. Finish up.
Okay, so for this episode, I'm going to keep it short. About the only point I really have is it's kind of nice remembering that Sam worked as like a grief counselor for soldiers with PTSD. Mm-hmm. That was sort of his introduction. So having him be the one to sort of actually be able to help Bucky work through his issues, I thought was a really nice little detail.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, that's it. That's all I got for that episode. And the montage song.
One world, one people, one Winfree. Wearing a new Captain America uniform, woohoo, and a flight suit from the Wakandans, forever, Wilson flies to New York to stop the Flag Smashers' attack with the help of Barnes, Carter, and Walker. Carter accidentally reveals that she is the power broker, dun dun dun, to Batroc and kills him, while Wilson attempts to reason with Morgenthau before Carter kills her as well. Wilson convinces the GRC to postpone the forced relocation of displaced people that Morgenthau died fighting for. Instead, make efforts to help them. The remaining Sturm-enhanced flag smashers are caught by Barnes and Walker and sent to the raft, but they are killed by Zemo's butler, Odenkirk, Ozark, whatever the fuck his name is, and Root. Elaine
is committed.
Elaine from Seinfeld gives Walker a new uniform and codename U.S. Agent. Yay, comics! Barnes makes amends with everyone he hurt or enabled as the Winter Soldier, while Wilson has a memorial dedicated to Bradley. Added to the Captain America Museum exhibit. In a mid-credit scene, after receiving a full pardon, Carter rejoins the CIA and intends to use this access to sell government secrets and resources, bringing us to Captain America 4. I'm just going to say this, and this is going to count as kind of like my final thoughts on this so that we can all, wrap this up shortly. I understand Robert's complaint, and Robert's going to go after me so we can get this out of the way. I understand Robert's complaint about Sam's speech. I like Sam's speech in a vacuum. I think the idea of, in general, not just, in the soldier trauma 12-step sense that Bucky is dealing with, but sort of just in a general, everyone can afford to do better, everyone can afford to make amends, nobody is perfect sense, and that the trying to do better is an admirable thing in the general human experience. I like that. I like that that's the message. I like that he says it. I think it needs to be said more often. It makes me kind of forgive the silliness of the show when they're dealing with all the stuff I've already talked about with regards to race, but also the idea of, hey, wouldn't it be better if we all tried to be better people? The idea of the death of common sense and bureaucratic red tape making life miserable for people when they really don't have to. The idea of resources being dedicated to a thing but it not making it to people. The way they talk about with the the GRC and the repatriation and all of that. Those are very real things. And, does Marvel handle it, like a pie in the face? Sure. But at least they're talking about it because it's not something that gets talked about in fictional broad television very much. So I'm very forgiving of Sam. Robert and I talked about this off air, and I kind of made the comparison between Sam's nagging at the end and me liking it versus Wonder Woman's nagging at the end of 1984 and me being bored to sleep. One, it's a matter of actor and performance. Gal Gadot does it in a trance, half asleep, while hooked on heroin, lying in a corner in the dark. And she's, whispering, into a whirlwind while what's-his-face is screaming and yelling and carrying on. Didn't love it. Sam's nagging. He's standing in a street yelling at senators and saying, for God's sakes, this isn't that hard. Try to do a little bit better, and maybe we won't have so many people going into radical terrorism. It's a matter of performance. It's a matter of setting, and certain words being used in tone. But Sam just does a better job of nagging. He just does, and I like it better. So, so sue me for liking Sam's nagging speech versus Gal Gadot's nagging speech.
I will.
Okay.
You'll be hearing from my attorney.
Do we cheat him and how? Other than that, I'm going to go ahead and agree with what Robert's about to say about how stupid it is to shoot your villain and then Sam angelically, descending from heaven.
I wanted to vomit.
Descending from heaven, wings spread far and wide as he presents the lady to the crowd.
Teenage girl. Oh, don't you see the humanity? Why did it come to this?
He stopped short of kissing her to bring her back to life, a la Prince Charming. A little over the top, Marvel. A little on the nose for me.
You're kind of in the same.
No. Then he would have been canceled right after.
I mean, you're kind of in the same stratosphere as Man of Steel, Jesus allegory.
Yeah. But it's stupid and everything else. But the point that I made to Robert when we hashed this out privately was they didn't want to do, what was Sam going to do? Punch the senator and have him arrested for whatever the hell the reasons are? The point was to give that speech at the end. They kind of had to do away with her. It's not the strongest writing. It's kind of stupid, but I saw the reason for it. So it was one of those where, and this is sort of my final thought with this whole show. It's not perfect. There's a lot of stupid, but I forgave the stupid because the good is really good. And it kind of, as opposed to WandaVision, where the stupid is so bad it brought the whole show down, the good is so good it brought the stupid up. Robert.
The good isn't all that good. It just speaks to you, which is fine. If we're talking about your personal enjoyment of something, which is, and again, perfectly valid.
I accept that.
You start with the positive. The bit at the end when Sam had the memorial to Isaiah put into the Captain America exhibit, I loved that. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing in the show that got me a little bit, and it did. It got me. That was really, really well done. I really liked that. This final episode is more or less a large action sequence, which has some high parts and some low parts. Mark already pulled these people don't know what they're talking about when they wrote this bit, so I'm going to, but since he stole it from me, I'm going to steal it back and use it for no one who writes anything like this ever does one iota of research about how security actually works for high-value personnel. Not one bit. I am familiar, loosely, with protective services like that because my maternal grandfather was a 30, give or take, year member of the California Highway Patrol, spent the last part of his time there in protective services because the Highway Patrol is the unit responsible for the protective detail to the governor. And again, this was California, so he worked with in his case, the lieutenant governor. And the lieutenant governor of certain states doesn't really mean a whole lot. When you're the lieutenant governor of California, you get to host other dignitaries, you get to meet with high-ranking officials from the White House, you get to travel overseas for goodwill missions, California having essentially like the third largest economy in the entire freaking world. And on occasion, when stuff like this would come up, he would happily talk about the time he got to interact with people from the Secret Service or other agencies and, some of the stuff that went into achieving security on that level. There is no way on God's green earth that something of this magnitude would be protected by anyone who could even remotely have anything of their online existence traced towards this group of terrorists. None. Zero, zip, zilch, nada. To say nothing of the external security. I'm a little more forgiving of that because we're trying to deal with keeping super soldiers out. But even then, the setup for that is not them tearing through the place. It's infiltration, which goes to, again, this only works if everyone at every level is bad at their job or corrupt. And that never happens. And it pisses me off.
Aliens, androids, and wizards, quantum, and vibranium.
I don't care.
I have a bow. None of this makes sense.
Go on, Robert.
Okay.
Move on to the next point.
That annoys me. Sam's speech. Oh, God. I agree. Let me start with this. I agree with Mark that that telling people to be better is good. It is a worthwhile endeavor to be better. That said, be better is not useful advice. It is an admirable goal. It is something we should all strive for.
Remember, he's yelling in a street. This isn't a meeting to hash out statute and law.
And yet, he's talking with legislators about the law.
In the street.
Yeah, but what percentage of legislators' stock and trade is in broad ideas and non-specific subclauses of legislation?
Fair enough.
Especially in front of people.
Yeah, I think it wasn't just do better, it was try harder.
Which is, again, still good. It's still an admirable goal, but poor advice.
Let me, in like a 10-word defense of that, Sam Wilson is a clinical counselor of some kind, mental health professional, social worker, whatever it was he was when he got out of the Army, and an Air Force pilot. Again, he might not know the finer points of lawcraft either. What's he going to start doing? Yelling specific points that they should enact into law?
Yeah, like who wants to watch a show that ends with like, okay, now turn to page 73, subsection 3, paragraph 72. I think we need to change the wording on this a little bit.
In your next budget, I have a list of amendments I'd like you to put in there, and I will yell them in the streets.
What was the last show Aaron Sorkin had on air?
The Newsroom.
Yeah, which ought to tell you that people do in fact want to watch that crap.
No, sir, I watched The Newsroom. They weren't doing that.
They were doing it for journalists.
Also, I spend most of my days looking through regulations. Trust me, no one would want to watch that show if we actually got into the reality of how those documents are structured.
Okay, again, I'm perfectly happy not getting too deep into the minutia, but you need to have something other than be better, Senator.
Okay, move on.
Every jackass on Twitter says that 50 times a day.
Well, who do you think it was meant for? Jackasses on Twitter. And us nerds.
I have a minor gripe here. The fight between Sam and Carly. I don't know who was doing this, and I don't know how far this sentiment spreads. I saw people comparing it to the fight between Cap and Bucky in Winter Soldier. And I wanted to put my head through a wall.
Yeah, no.
There is no comparison in either the choreography or the emotion. Bucky was abducted, tortured, abused, brainwashed, and had no choice in his actions. And was Steve Rogers' best friend. And if you're into that kind of theory and / fiction, more than that.
Go on. In detail.
Let's just say that the robotic arm winds up in places.
Woo!
This was absolutely not that. Carly had a choice at every step of the way along her progression from theoretically rational human being to let's murder people, a lot of them, and terrorize everyone until we get our way. Sam's refusal to fight her is a moral failing on his part. I'm not saying he should have killed her, but he should have fought her. Instead, he has to get bailed out by Barbie's first spy kid. I don't know. Why is anyone rooting for this guy? He has not won a fight in the entire history of his on-screen persona.
Well, he did get to say on your left in Infinity War.
Sure. And I'm sure Captain America wanted to once again go, hey, I understood that reference right before they got into the big fight.
Are you done so that we can move on and go to sleep? Make your final point here so we can wrap this up.
They didn't give Bucky. Okay, here it is. The other emotional core of this particular episode. Bucky's final confession to this old Asian man that he violently murdered his son. I love that scene. And Sebastian Stan does such a wonderful job when they give him the ability and the time to actually act. There's the scene earlier when he's trying to process that he's no longer as conditioned to respond to that said sequence of words, where he just like breaks down sobbing by the fire. It's genuinely great. This was genuinely great. Bucky getting a little bit of closure and starting to move on. The other high point of this episode in particular. Last thing about John Walker. I like that they gave him his kind of hero moment when he has he's presented with a choice between chasing down a few of the fleeing super soldiers or stopping the armored car full of people from falling off the cliff. He chooses to save people rather than seek vengeance. And that's a really nice bit for that character because, again, he's nuanced, he's layered, he did not turn into, I know I referenced him earlier, he did not turn into the Punisher seeking vengeance above all else. He still wants to be a hero. And it was nice of them to give him that moment, especially after all the crap that he went through and that and the mistakes that he did make. So I appreciated that. I wish I could potentially be excited about a U.S. Agent spinoff, but I hate Julia Louis-Dreyfus, so I can't. Yeah, that's my kind of let me just get my 50 words or less out on the whole series, and then I can shut up for the rest of this. I didn't enjoy this for the most part. It has some high points. It has some good stuff to it. I get why people do like it. I didn't. I'd like to think my criticisms are at least based somewhat in reality and not just me being the old man yelling at clouds, but one of these days that's not going to be true, and we all know it. So, yeah, that's it. That's my thoughts on this whole particular endeavor. And I am... God, Loki. Just why?
Alexis, your thoughts on the episode and your final thoughts on the show.
It was awesome seeing Falcon in his comic book accurate costume. The memorial for Isaiah Bradley made me cry. I can't wait to see the next Captain America movie. Can I go to bed now?
You want to do your plugs real quick and then you can go?
I'll wait till everyone else is done, but sweet Jesus, if I had known this was going to go this late, I would have bowed out and just said, you guys can talk about it all you want. I'm going to get some sleep.
David?
Yeah, well, first thing, I actually watched most of this dubbed in Japanese because I watched it with my wife. So to the unpaid intern at Disney listening to this, add Japanese subtitles to Disney Plus. You're Disney. You can do whatever you want. No one can stop you.
Okay, I'm going to have to fire up Sam's speech in Japanese just so I can watch it not sync up properly.
To their credit, the dub is quite high quality. Like the syncing is as good as you can get, and I think the voices are matched up pretty well. But still, it would be nice for me to get the actual English performances.
So they have both Portuguese and no Japanese on here.
Yeah, again, you can watch it dubbed in Japanese, but there's no subtitles, and it's like, come on, you're Disney. You've got the money. No government can stop you. You're freaking Disney. Like, just do it.
Okay, Dave.
Anyway, not really related thematically to the show, but I needed to get it off my chest. Yeah, so, I mean, like, obviously there's a lot of sort of controversy surrounding the whole, like, adding more diversity into superheroes, because a lot of these characters were, like, made pre the 50s, and, now, the culture, demographics have changed. And a lot of people, I think, just don't like the whole we're just making this character more diverse because, and you must love it. Whereas I appreciate in this one, they actually kind of, in the end, Falcon becomes Captain America, but they also make that the central theme of the show. So by the time, Sam gets to the point of, I'm going to become the next Captain America, you're on board with him. It feels more natural, more organic, and you're on board. It doesn't feel like they just, slap the shield on him and like, there, problem solved. So I appreciate that. I thought that the Global Repatriation Council meeting at the beginning was like so ham-fisted it felt like a Neil Breen film.
Not wrong. You are not wrong.
It's like, should we even bother voting? Ha ha ha! My troops are ready. Yes, we control the global government and make sure that the people don't get the resources that they need because it keeps us wealthy and in power. Yes, I know. Ha ha ha! Like it was almost
references to the Galactic Senate.
Just about, but even more ham-fisted than that. But Anyway, so I thought that was a little too I think you could have done a little bit better there, but okay, I get what you were going for. Again, I liked the speech at the end. I thought it was kind of nice to have a sort of a more positive look on things, and I think it really tied the show together. How it really went through all the negative aspects of, like what Sam was dealing with, not getting any financial support despite being a hero, despite being loyal customers to the bank, the racist cop scene, the whole thing with Isaiah and how he was abused and not given any credit. You understand why Sam is conflicted about becoming Captain America, but in the end, he sort of has that line, we built this country, we bled for it. I'm not going to let anyone tell me I can't fight for it. Overall, I think as a whole, it works better than any of its individual elements, and I sort of like that warts and all perspective, but despite all that, we're not going to give up fighting, and we're going to try and do our best. And, hopefully step by step we can get things better in the future. And it was nice to kind of have it end on a high note and deal with a bit of the sort of conflicting issues within that.
Andrew.
I think everything that's been said is I definitely agree with. I think there are a couple of criticisms about the episode. I think again, I mentioned this a little bit about the last one. I think we could have used a little bit better setup on kind of the mechanics of the finale, what was at stake. Like, I knew they were taking all those people from the conference. I just didn't know what they were going to do with them. Mm-hmm. What was the stake of losing those people? And it didn't set up that well. I think the performance works. I think the speech works. I think what was lacking for me was, and they gave him a couple of them, but what I think I was looking for was, for introducing the new Captain America, is to really give him kind of I'll reference back to the Avengers. You want the Avengers theme moment. You want because the first time you see him in the costume, he just kind of throws the shield and you see him in it for a second. I wanted that, that additional music and that kind of that heroic, iconic moment to be in there. And they didn't quite go for it. Like I said, I think they still built him up really well as being the new Captain America. They gave him plenty of moments to work towards that. It was just something that I think I was expecting, but didn't quite hit. All the resolution with Bucky worked really well. I like the way they ended the series. I really enjoyed it. I think it's probably one of the better and ballsiest things, and some of the things that it was trying to say beyond be better that I think the MCU has done. It was also kind of ironic. The day I watched the finale, I actually watched an episode of The West Wing, Robert Don't At Me, that actually had Carl Lumley kind of give that exact same speech. And I didn't realize it was him until after I watched the end. It's like, wait a second, was that the same actor in both shows? And as it turned out, it was. But anyway, I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to whatever the next iteration is of the next Captain America movie, as it will be. I am looking forward to Loki. My wife's actually looking forward to it a little bit more. It's going to be. I'm kind of glad to see that among these series we're getting a little bit of a tonal difference each time, and yeah.
All right, before we go, really quickly, I just want to remind people that if you click the link in the description for getamazonmusic.com, you can get a free 30 days of Amazon Music on us. You can check out the soundtrack to this Falcon and the Winter Soldier. You can check out all of the albums that we review on the Metal Hammer of Doom, like Van Weezer or Dr. Feelgood or Tomahawk. We discuss so much music here in the Radulich Broadcasting Network. We all listen to music in our private lives, and we like to chat about it when we're working or doing whatever, working out, throwing punches and kicks, whatever it is we do. If you want to pick a streaming service that has just an endless cadre of music to choose from, go ahead and click our link at getamazonmusic.com/W2M network for a free 30 days of Amazon Music on us. And with that said, Alexis, go ahead and do your plugs.
Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic. We're getting ready for our Memorial Day sale. We're going to be doing a charity drive during that sale for tiny homes for homeless veterans here in Kansas City. This is a charity we've worked with before. I am going to kill my dog who has been interrupting this entire show. My God, Eddie, what the hell is wrong with you? And on another note, we are getting ready to start looking for contestants for Tripped Up Trivia here at the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. We're going to be recording in June. We just finished our first show the other day. It's going to be up fairly soon. I actually got to listen to the edit today. It sounds really good. Theme was sci-fi in honor of May the 4th. The theme for June's trivia game is going to be female superheroes. If this is something you think you'd like to take a shot at, go ahead and hit us up on Twitter or Facebook. Again, we're always looking for contestants for that.
All right, just real quick, I'm just going to blurt all these out. We reviewed Truth, Red, White, and Black, which was the inspiration for the Isaiah Bradley character. We did a deep dive of WrestleMania 2. We reviewed Wrath of Man. We reviewed Deadpool the Duck. The Superblog team-up was this week. We reviewed the aforementioned Motley Crue Dr. Feelgood. We also reviewed the 2 Eddie Murphy Dr. Dolittle movies. Last night, Jesse and I reviewed Van Weezer by Weezer. And tomorrow, myself and Robert Winfree are reviewing The Woman in the Window. And then new friend of the show, Jeff Sloboda, and I will be reviewing Stowaway from Netflix starring Anna Kendrick. Plus, we are re-releasing our Long Road to Ruin for Saw Parts 1 and 2 to coincide with the release of Spiral. And I'd like to remind you to go into the archives and check out our review of Jigsaw from when that came out before you go see Spiral. Saturday, Jesse's got a syndicated source material for What If the Alien Costume Had Possessed Spider-Man. And then on Sunday, we're re-airing, speaking of Punisher, we're re-airing our review of Daredevil Season 2. Next week, we've got some content for Jupiter's Legacy, a review of Spiral. I decided not to do Math the Band since we just did Anna Managuchi, and I can only do so much chiptune in 1 month. So instead, we are doing a much more better band, Saliva, and their new EP, Every 20 Years, plus a bunch of their singles. We'll also be reviewing WrestleMania Backlash and Impact Under Siege, featuring Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers versus Finn Juice and Eddie Edwards. On Friday, we've got a bunch of shows lined up for you. Myself and Alexis Hejna are going to review MODOK Assassin to coincide with the release of MODOK on Hulu. Robert Winfree and I will review Army of the Dead. And Jason Teasley and I will not only review the new Aquarium of the Dead, but also the previous 2 Zombies movies. Yes, Zombies 1 and 2. And with Aquarium of the Dead completing the Zombies trilogy. Oh boy. It's exactly what everyone was wanting. Robert, without repeating exactly what I just said, do your plugs.
Well, again, as Mark just mentioned, we have a bunch of stuff coming up. So be on the lookout. You can just follow along. Follow Mark on Twitter. Like the Radulich and Broadcasting Network Facebook page. There's a schedule that's posted there. It's never updated after it's posted the first time, so at the moment it's not completely accurate, but it'll give you a good idea about what's coming up. I cover a lot of professional wrestling because I'm a giant pushover. As my participation on various shows on this network should tell you as well. I covered Monday Night Raw this week. I covered AEW's Dark Elevation. I have a report for MLW's old Underground Network episode that they re-aired. Let's see, tomorrow, in addition to reviewing Woman in the Window with Mark, I'll cover WWE SmackDown in the evening. And Saturday, UFC 262. We'll be covering all those in 411 Mania, the wrestling stuff in the Wrestling Zone, the MMA stuff in the MMA Zone. I host the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast on Sundays. Last episode was a review of the previous week's event, which I've mostly forgotten already because it was deeply unmemorable, and a preview of UFC 262, so you can get all of my thoughts on that. And this Saturday, we'll review UFC 262, talk news of the week, and preview UFC on ESPN Plus 46. That particular event has a heck of a main event. Let's hope it holds together. When Rob Font fights former bantamweight champion Cody Garbrandt. That is a great, great fight on paper. So please don't fall apart.
David, you got anything for us before we go?
Just still working on the Kelvin Timeline Star Trek retrospective podcast. It sounds like it's going to be a good one, so look forward to that.
Take me home, baby doll.
I'm assuming you're referring to me.
That's right, baby. Woo!
Quality online martial arts training. I do thoroughly suggest you go check out SD Martial Arts and Havoc JKD. Currently offering online classes based out of Calgary, Alberta, part of the larger JKD Athletic Association. Those are all available on the internet, on Facebook, and in your social media sources. Also, if you get a chance and you are interested in some high-level martial arts discussion, please go check out my instructor, Jay Cooper's podcast called The Baying of the Hound. Thank you very much, everybody.
For Robert Winfree, for Alexis Hejna, for her dogs, for Japanese subtitles, for David, for the Canadian National Army, for Mooses and Syrup, and Andrew Graham, who we all know and love, this has been our review of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Be well, be safe, and behave.